Welcome, everyone. This is the broadcast for the David Crowley case, or the Justice for David Crowley and Family Facebook group. What we've got here tonight is Greg Fernandez Jr. on the line, Catherine Michelle on the line, and myself, Dan Hennen, here. And what we've got is this opened up here for this broadcast on a public forum here to be able to talk and chat and ask questions and have a discussion here. And as we get going, more people will join. Greg's going to be heading that up as far as monitoring the folks joining. But we'd like to start off the conversation tonight with a couple that knew actually David Crowley, his brother Dan, and they've just been following this case. It sounds like here for the last couple of weeks. They're from the neighboring city of Egan. I'd like to get your guys' thoughts on how you stumbled upon the case, and what are your thoughts when you heard about the aftermath, and when did you know the family?
Yes, this is Jamie. We knew the family back in the 90s. We went to the church with them. Grew up with our sons grew up together. We did some baseball together. Went to a few baseball games.
They moved to Owatonna.
And then they moved to Owatonna, and we lost track of them after they moved.
No, we got together a few times.
Yeah, we got together a few times, but yeah, the closeness kind of went away after they moved away. But we did stay in touch with them here and there. And then it was just 2 weeks ago that my son actually stumbled upon a video that showed at the end a trailer of the David's production, the Gray State, yeah. And then he sent it to us and said, "Is this the Crowleys that we knew?" And we watched it, and it was like, "Oh my God, it is." Yeah. So so from there, I was at work. My wife actually had spring break, so she just divulged into all this information that we just never knew about, and it floors us. I mean, it's just total by surprise.
We always thought we'd get together again in the future.
Yeah.
Now we know that Kate is gone.
Yeah.
And David.
Well, sorry you had to find out that way. It must have been a shock. We're very glad to have you on, because a lot of this really helps to fill in the blanks when we get people that have either been neighbors, family members, relatives, or what have you. Like you said, going to church and being on the baseball teams with and whatnot. It really helps because it helps fill in the blanks, not for what has happened per se, because we don't really know, but it can fill in the background as far as the family. And like you said, you had went to church and knew them in the 90s before this case, before they moved to Owatonna. Now, there's a lot of listeners, a lot of people following the case that aren't familiar with really the state of Minnesota. I am from Chaska myself, and this is Dan. I grew up and I lived when I had married and had two children, and was living in Apple Valley at the time. And so I was aware of the area because I had lived literally 4 blocks away from the Crowley residence. Not while they were there. I had since moved away and lived in Chaska, which is about a 30-minute drive. But a lot of the other familiar names or the topics of towns here comes into play is Owatonna, and that's where the family moved to. And that's, would you say, Jamie, is that about a 45-minute drive from the Apple Valley home, roughly?
From Apple Valley.
From Apple Valley.
Our house would be an hour.
Yeah, it was about 45 minutes from Apple Valley. Yeah, they moved basically right straight across from Cabela's off of 35.
Okay, so that's about a 45-minute drive. And the family themselves, I think the wife, Kate, was from White Bear Lake. Is that where the family was first when they were growing up? Before they moved to Owatonna, they were more in the Twin Cities here, the White Bear Lake area, I believe.
Yes, correct.
Okay, that's right. She graduated high school from there, and that's probably where you two knew the family, probably in some surroundings in that location as well.
Yeah, we were across the lake, actually, Matamidi.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Well, very interesting. And so what we could do, Greg, and I know Catherine too, for those of us who's followed this a while. Myself, it's been over 4 years now. Greg, about 4 years. Catherine, I think 2 years maybe.
Yeah, about a year and a half.
A year and a half, and now Jamie and I'm assuming your wife is there. Just jumped on this case, 2 weeks ago. So it must be a shock. One of the things we found in the investigation going back is a lot of people wanted to know why the move, what caused the move to Owatonna, and what came about. And maybe you can even shed some light on this. It was a church incident in high school that happened. That with the fallout from that, from a youth camp or something in White Bear Lake, they ended up moving down south to Owatonna, which is a 45-minute drive away because of something, the alleged allegations that took place on a church camping trip with David's older brother, Danny Jr. And so we have not been able to get any confirmation except a cousin that came forward to say that's really what spurred this whole thing on, causing the family to move. It was my impression, I never knew them, Jamie and, I'm sorry, what's your wife, Jamie's wife?
Carla,
I didn't know the families myself. I just jumped onto this case afterwards. I wasn't even a fan of the programmer or anything. So we had a cousin that came forward and mentioned this, and they said really it caused a lot of turmoil there in the church. They had to leave, move to Owatonna, and then kind of restart there. And that was under her impression, which also caused I wouldn't say the marriage to fall apart, but really got, it's not estranged, what's the word I'm looking for? It got to be tougher, and then they ended up getting divorced, Dan Sr. and Kate, after I think David Crowley graduated high school. I think they waited till he was 18 or something, and then they officially got divorced, and then Kate was actually living still in Owatonna, and that's where Dan Sr. lives to this day. So a lot of connections to Owatonna, but it was around that time in high school that they moved. Were you guys aware of anything that went on there at the church that caused this turbulence to come about?
Actually, absolutely not. We did not. The time frame of that whole thing doesn't match with the age of the kids when we were with them. Dan was working in Owatonna, and the travel from White Bear to Owatonna was just getting, more and more, it just, with more and more of, I guess, the population, it got, longer and longer for travel time. And to the best of our knowledge of it, that really was the reason that we understood that they moved to Owatonna, which at the time was totally understandable because he worked, actually, the glass company he worked in was in Faribault, and they moved to just off the highway in Owatonna, which basically gave him a 10-15 minute drive. And yeah, we had no idea whatsoever about the case in with the church and the allegations that were against Danny at camp. We heard about that just through the videos.
Are you sure that didn't happen in Owatonna?
Yeah.
Because he would have been very young.
He was really
when they moved.
Yeah, they were really young when they were younger when they actually moved to Owatonna. So the timeline there doesn't.
Well, what year they moved to Owatonna? We cannot remember that year. If you have that, because their son's the same age as our son, so.
Okay, I can look that up. I've got the timeline, but this certainly does help because, like I said, we've got someone that came forward and then who later recanted. And some of the story that this person said made sense, and some of it didn't. But we did draw a lot of criticism from that because, we didn't know what to take from it. So this does really help.
It does not add up.
Yeah, the time frame doesn't add up at all as far as the age of the kids when they moved to Owatonna, and it would have been before. I'm guessing it would have been around before 2000, maybe 1999, 2000 years.
When you graduated in 2002 from high school.
Right, and they were already in Owatonna. Yeah.
Okay. Well, all this is very, very helpful. I appreciate coming forward with this information. And then while I looked that up, what else did you know with the family? What are your thoughts on the younger sister Allison and Dan Sr. and Dan Jr. and Kate? And what were your thoughts when you found out that Kate had died?
Oh, I was devastated because, like I said, I thought we would get together in the future and catch up on things. So it's just heartbreaking. It's just
it's a lot to take in, and a lot to as a sponge to try to soak this information in, because it's so much. And then when you start going through the articles that Greg has written and the videos that the three of us have done, and then the newspaper articles and the mainstream media that has covered this as well, it gets you pointed in a lot of different directions. So you find yourself kind of hard to stay focused on where to really lead down the rabbit hole.
Right. I feel like I'm everywhere. Maybe it was too soon to connect with you guys, but it's like, wow.
I'm glad you did. I'm very glad you did. This is good. Like I said, I'll pull up that timeline. And then I think the daughter, Allison, is now living in, I think she's in Baltimore, I think, and has recently gotten married. Her partner's name is, I think, Suzanne. So she's married.
Mm-hmm.
Dan Jr. is still here in the Twin Cities, and Dan Sr. is still in Owatonna.
Yeah, and mostly for us, I mean, Allison was still a young child. I mean,
they all were.
Yeah, they were all.
We have 4 kids.
Yeah, we've got 4.
3, and they all hung out when we got together.
Yeah, so as far as when the kids themselves, they were still young when we ran into them and did stuff with them. And then the last time we did something was, I believe, 2006 with Andy's baseball. 2002 with Andy's baseball. It was
before graduation.
Yeah. So the kids were really, as far as we remember them, they were young. So as far as what Allison going off, we did not know about that. And Danny, what he does currently, we do not know. And
they were all home and not graduated from high school yet.
Yeah, so they were still all home. So it's been a while.
Okay, interesting. And what are your thoughts then of the official narrative as portrayed by law enforcement, or the official narrative? I don't want to swing in any direction or not, but what are your first thoughts when you heard the conclusion of the official report?
No way, not possible.
Oh, really? Okay, so it did come off as very suspicious as far as how even relates to you guys who knew them in the past. It just didn't add up. Okay.
Yeah, not at all.
No, not the family we knew.
Yeah.
And I've just looked through so much now, though, but just even the photos and everything just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, well, there was certainly a lot of theories and conjecture, and we started that right off the bat. We faced a lot of that with folks saying that the CIA was involved, a hit team was involved, it was a professional hit. Then some said that David actually did it. And what we've narrowed down, I think, with Greg and Catherine on the phone, like I said, we're not here to sell anyone on a theory, but the evidence has pointed us in the direction that, number one, David Crowley himself did not do this, and that's just based on evidence. And the question is, it does appear that 1 to 2 or more individuals were in the home and killed the family. Who is that? We don't know. It doesn't seem like a professional style hit, and that's why we've got this page set up and a group to be able to discuss some of this, so we don't come off as conspiracy theorists, so to say. And we're trying to focus just on the facts and the evidence only and the forensics of it, and that tells us that he didn't do this. The question is, who did? We also don't know that, and I think what I try to lead the group, and I think Catherine and Greg are very good with this as also, is the fact that we would like to get the case either reopened or classify David's death as a homicide instead of a suicide, or have cause of death at least be unknown, considered as an unknown officially in the police logs. Now, they refuse to reopen this case, but we think there's just enough evidence there to simply reopen it, because the facts of the case don't line up with what actually happened. And we're not here to come in with different theories and scenarios of what did happen, but we can tell by the evidence obviously what did not happen. And it's safe to say that David Crowley did not kill his wife and child and himself, because physically he couldn't have with the evidence that we've seen. So that's where we're at right now here 4 years later. Any thoughts on that aspect, Greg?
Just one question, because I've always been curious about their Christianity, and so they did go to church. Is that correct? And what type of church did they go to? Do you know?
Well,
at the time, it was Twin Cities Bible Church.
Non-denominational.
Yeah, non-denominational church. It was Twin Cities Bible Church, which we were focused on living our lives according to biblical truths. And as far as the upbringing of our children, the same way, a Christian-based raising of kids. And we did a lot of the things with the church group. And as far as the church outings and stuff, we were all part of it. So yeah, as far as we knew them, and the kids, they were raised as the kind of a non-denominational, Christ-centered, Bible-believing family.
We had no idea about any charges at our church.
At a church, yeah.
Either they chose not to tell us or it didn't happen. And the way things looked, I would say it didn't happen.
Do you know if there's any way to help us get some evidence to say that it didn't happen? Maybe a pastor there or somebody there who can really help us just kind of kill that whole theory, so we can just focus on. Go ahead.
Yeah, we got to figure out that timeline, because to me it sounded like it happened in Owatonna, and we weren't a part of that church.
Oh, okay.
We're too young for anything like that to happen here.
Well, yeah. When we were there at TCBC, the kids were too young to be a part of him being Danny being a counselor there. So that's what we're thinking. It probably was a time after that, and we don't even know if it was this church.
And they never shared anything.
Yeah, they did not share that with us at all.
My understanding, and that's a good point, Greg, because we do on each of these topics, we would like to either confirm or deny the allegations, just to at least move forward that it didn't happen, or if it did, move forward in that direction. Because a lot of the time spent on this page with the discussions and people commenting back and forth is spent on all this speculation. So, like you said, anything would help, either confirming or denying it. What was my impression here? It looks like they moved in. I don't have the move date. 2004 is when David graduated high school.
Okay, yeah.
And then Kate and Dan Sr. was divorced in 2005, and at this time they were already in Owatonna, living there. Now the article, and that may be rather than spend time tonight on that, it might be something that I could forward you, that actual allegation on that email that I've received from that, because she gives the times and dates, and it was not in Owatonna. It was in the previous location at the previous church, and Dan Jr. was not a counselor per se. He was in the youth group, but he was one of the group leaders as a teen or a preteen. I think he was 14 or 15 years old, and he had some camp kids beneath him, is how she mentioned it to him, that were maybe 8, 9, 10, or 11 of that age. So he wasn't a leader or he was just not a camp counselor, but he was a teen at the time when that happened. And she said no charges were brought, and the church hushed it because they ended up, I think the children, there was 2 defendants, I think, that were the victims, and they all agreed, the families, just to cover it up, because the Crowley family was going to move and just leave it alone. So there wouldn't be anything official, and even if they did talk to the pastor, nothing was confirmed, nothing was official about that, because he or she, whoever that pastor was, I'm sure was not going to talk about it anyway, even if it did or didn't happen. But it was about, those are the time frames of the ages, if that makes sense. But what I'll do is, after the show here, I'll send you that article, and you can vet it to see for authenticity, because if we can rule it out, then we can rule it out. And so the other question is, they were from a Baptist church. That's good. That is good information for for everyone to be aware of listening on the call, Greg, Catherine, and myself are all Christian folks, Bible, I guess, fearing individuals ourselves. And that's one of the reasons we've got 2,600 members here. What I see is most of them are a Christian background or coming from a faith background to begin with, which has drawn them into this case. And I may be wrong on that too, but I do see a lot of members coming in from a faith-based, whether it's even a Muslim background like the Kamel's family or not, because it really got individuals involved because this is so different than anything that they would have done in this family. And so that's I think that's fair to say. Do you guys agree with that? We seem to get a lot of, I think, Christian or faith-based members in our group that are following this case.
Oh, yeah.
Catherine?
Yes, absolutely. I did have a question, though, for this couple. When you knew David, how old was he, and how was he as a child?
They're happy young kids. Our kids would go off and play. We would visit as adults. Nothing stood out as being any different than No.
It's just kids.
Happy.
I mean, yeah, there was.
We were a great family.
Yeah.
Lots of fun.
Yeah, never had any issues. And like I say, I mean, I'm sure every family has their issues, but yeah, there's nothing that stands out in the times that we were together. Absolutely not. I mean, the kids play together, right within our families. So
David was like a friendly kid. He was outgoing, or what?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, he would be right in playing with all of our kids, and then even in the groups at church, he was right there playing with everyone. So
the church covered this up well if it happened.
If it did. Yep.
Yeah, because see, usually when something like this type of murder that occurred in their home, whoever did this, it's usually like a long time coming. When people you hear sometimes where people say, "Oh, well, they just snapped." That's really not a good term to use, because it's usually been built up over years and years and years, and these are people who usually have issues from the time that they were children, and that's why I cannot see everything I've read about David. I can't see him as this kind of person, and so it's interesting to me to hear you guys speak of them as young children and how they were all happy.
Yeah, there's something that came into that situation. That I'm processing everything that I've just listened to in the last couple of weeks, and there's definitely something outside force that's come in there that I think you guys have nailed it. But how do we know for sure? I mean, I don't know.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. What was that?
I think you guys, at least with one of the things I listened to, at a federal level. There's like two ways it could have been at the federal level, and it really sounds like one of them's right.
Yeah, because I have taken this, and I've said this before, but I have asked several different police officers in many different states and even in different countries, because I just, throw it out there and just say, hey, here's a photo, I want to show it to you, here's the case, tell me what you think, without giving them any information. And everyone, without exception, have all said, well, that's a triple homicide. Mm-hmm. And they're like, They have no idea why they say this is, and they're doing that because these are people with years and years and years of homicide background, and when they're looking at the photo, and they're just like, yeah, no, this is a triple homicide.
The other thing, Jamie and Carla, that we have from looking at this for multiple years is I guess it's two ways. The pointing of the fingers at the Apple Valley police detectives there and the police department is, I think, twofold. Number one, it's deserving. Number one, The other thing is that by default, the reaction is even if you are for I myself am for law enforcement and I'm pro law enforcement, but I'm also very vocal if there is misgivings or something that are wrong or complicit, like with the recent Smollett case in Chicago. There's things like that I'm anti. Although the police did a good job on that case, it was the district attorney that decided to drop the charges. But the real issue I think the three of us have is twofold. Number one, the police went out of their way to make a public press release saying the public is safe.
And that was in a very short time, wasn't it?
Very early. I think the very next day they said that the public is not in danger, is I think the exact words. And we know now by forensic evidence, David did not do this, and obviously Kamel Irani didn't either. So the problem is we've got killers on the loose, which means that the public is in danger. And that is, in my mind and in my book, and I've got family and friends that are in law enforcement, is to come out and say that the public is not in danger is the height of hypocrisy. So that is the thing that really drives it home to me. Whether or not they did a good job on the detective work or not, they may have made a mistake. They may have missed some things here and there. But how dare they come out and say the public is safe when they're not? And the killers are indeed, to this very day, on the loose. And so that, I think, was what is more of the driving force for myself to keep this alive, to keep pushing for this, and the fact that a 5-year-old girl was killed along with an innocent wife as well. So those are the things that motivate me in particular. I'm not sure about the others, but whether we've got of the 2,600 members in our group, many are anti-police, anti-cop. Some are pro, and some are very pro law enforcement and cop. But we've really given the hard time to the Apple Valley Police detectives, and I do believe that is warranted because of the evidence of reading the police reports and such. So that's not really just pointing the finger and throwing them under the bus because we can. It's because the evidence points in that direction that they failed, and they failed miserably. So the only question now is, did they fail on purpose? Were they compromised? Did someone cover up, and were they active in the cover-up, or were they simply that inept? Now, the city of Apple Valley gets an average of 1 homicide per year, and now they're hit with 3 in one day. So it's safe to say they were over their heads. I'm also not saying that they're stumbling, bumbling imbeciles who don't know their job. They are intelligent individuals and worthy law enforcement cops. Now, that does not mean to say that they are veteran homicide detectives, is where the criticism comes in. And so just to get this record straight there, I do personally believe that they did not do a good job, regardless if there was compromise or not. Things were done that were just very elementary that were missed on many, many, many things.
Yeah, because a lot of years had gone by before they even had any homicides. At least, I can't remember. I did a video on it. Somewhere between 3 and 6 or 7 years, they had not had any homicides at all. And then all of a sudden, there's 3 people dead in their city, and that would be overwhelming for anybody. 3 to begin with, but when you have a department that in 13, 14 years only had maybe 5 murders, that's not a whole lot of experience.
Correct. Greg, are others joining on the call? Or just listening?
I'm sorry, what was that, Dan?
I was asking Greg if he can give us a count so far of have we got a more handful of people on the call, whether on the internet or the phone itself?
Yeah, right now we have 15 people here.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yeah, and Carla, were you asking a question?
Well, I'm just wondering why they wouldn't be be more willing to open it up again and just to admit mistakes, unless they're taking orders from above, where they can't.
Yeah, I just recently spoke with Detective Sergeant Gummert, and he just flat out said that he was told by the police chief they're just not going to open it. End of story. They wouldn't give a reason why. The answer is just no. And I told them, I said, because I sent them all of the proof that we had found about the multiple blunt force trauma to David's head and stuff like this, just everything. And I'm like, okay, you have to see this, and you have to understand that this man was beat. So, this couldn't be a suicide, homicide, murder, suicide. And they just would never even answer. They're just like, nope, it will never be reopened. It's done. We're over with it. And I'm like, that's not right.
No.
Can I ask one question? Maybe two. First, have you both seen the documentary that came out called A Gray State? I think it came out in the end of 2017. And have you spoken to Dan Crowley Sr.? And is there any chance that you might reach out to him if you haven't spoken to him?
That's where we started watching that. Our son. Go ahead.
Our son emailed it to us, and that's where what Troy relayed earlier, that he called us and just said, I just watched this trailer, and it's of Dan Crowley. Or David Crowley. Is that the David Crowley that we knew? And it's from the Netflix series. And then he sent us the link. We watched it, and it's like, that is absolutely them. And then from there. Yeah, since, like I say, it's only been 2 weeks. We have not reached out to Dan Sr. I would be very curious to do so. Where he's at now, I do not know. We know where their old house is, and obviously they are not there anymore. We stopped by a couple of times and left messages in their mailbox and never had any response.
We didn't know they had moved.
Yeah, and then they must have moved sometime before that. That was about 2000. Actually, that was 2005-ish or so.
Oh, they apparently divorced in 2005.
Yeah.
And that was a shock.
So they may have been already gone. So so I would be intrigued to definitely reach out to him and find out. Where do you begin? I would be at a loss of words, and
he might be afraid to talk. I don't know.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, you just look at. I look at his expression. While he was doing this documentary, and there was something behind it that maybe I'm reading into it, but there was something behind it that did not look like Dan Crowley.
Yeah, you're talking about the father.
Yeah.
I mean, just the look on his. Yeah, the look on his face just broke my heart. I mean, it just goes right through you. You're like, something's not right.
And if I'm about Peyton, I'm sure others are afraid.
Yeah.
Did they ever give a reason? I mean, cause of death for Kate?
Other than natural causes, quote unquote?
I haven't been able to find anything on her, nothing. So I don't know. Hopefully somebody can help us with that, because that would be good to kind of, again, to just bring some closure to that, because it just seems like nobody wants to talk about it. And I can understand that under normal circumstances, but with all of the conspiracies and all of that stuff, it'd be nice if somebody could help us just kind of get some real data on it and just figure out what really did happen, because that was, as soon as everybody heard that, I mean, what's the first thing that you're going to think of? Well, was there some foul play? Well, if there was foul play possibly involved in David's death, what are the chances that there might be foul play involved in this? And sometimes when we say that, then I know people twist those words and they go back to people who are in communication with Dan Crowley Jr. and Sr. and probably other family members too, and twist that to say that we think that they killed Kate, and it gets into all of this crazy stuff. So we're just trying to get some factual data.
Back to Kate, it was not necessarily natural causes, but it was nature caused her to die. I think it was gastrointestinal issues. due to many years of drinking and being a severe alcoholic is what it sounds like. That one night she just died. Now the question that we had from an investigative standpoint is what caused that death. She had bleeding out of the ears and the mouth, or the nose and the mouth, sitting there at her table, back room patio table outside. She was on the main level of her, just outside on the grass. No fence, nothing around there. If someone did come in and do something to it, they could have easily fled. Now, her boyfriend at the time, first name of Curtis, that was dating her, was the one who couldn't, called and couldn't reach her. And at midnight, he had, I think, went there or called and found the body, and then police came and found everything. Now, he has never come forward and said anything, and the conjecture, I'll say, or speculation is that he either didn't have a lot of money or didn't have a big job or something, and he was being supported actually by Dan Sr. to some extent on a monthly payment or a monthly allowance or something. He was supporting. And so our question is, why didn't this Curtis come forward, at least to our group or to someone else, not necessarily the authorities, but just give his side of the story of what he thought happened. And the question is that he was in potential fear of losing that monthly payment or that funding, which I guess he probably would have lost anyway with Kate now being dead. And so he didn't want to step up because he was essentially, if he controlled or compromised by Dan Sr. So he just left the whole thing alone and never said one word. So we don't know if that's true or not. But then again, Kate was working. She had two jobs. She was working at a convenience store, a Quick Trip or something, and then she's working as a health professional, not a chiropractor, but a physical therapist or a massage therapist. No, that's not right either. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but she was working and had a couple licensures and certificates. So, she was an educated woman and was healthy. And so whether or not she had a drinking problem, it didn't impact her life. So for her to just wind up dead like that was very strange. Now, the only evidence that we had was that in the police report, the original 94-page police report from Apple Valley did say that when they notified the families, both the Alam family and the Crowley family bought it or agreed to it and thought it was reasonable. Kate Crowley herself was the only one who says, I don't think this could have happened the way it happened unless David jointly did with Comel, if anything. But so she's the only one that really, as we call it, she showed doubt. She expressed doubt that this thing went down as planned. And so if she's the only one in the police report of anyone that I read on the 94 pages that expressed any kind of doubt, and she's also conveniently the only one now dead. And so that brings more speculation on, was she going to talk? Was she going to expose something? And that's also what brought up the back to the family affairs. Was there something in the Crowley family from years back or decades back that was some hidden secret? Was there something going on there behind closed doors? We don't know. We do know Allison as an adult is gay. Dan Jr. as an adult is gay. The only person that's straight is David, and he's the one who's dead. So was there something going on there? And that would lead back once again to Dan Sr. If there was some speculation on potential family abuse, physical or sexual. It's very rare, and you guys could maybe attest to this being from Minnesota. I find that very strange. Most families that I know, if there's a family member, there might be one in the entire family that as an adult life is gay or comes out as gay or comes out of the closet. This particular family, 2 of the 3, and so that raised a red flag for me. I was one of those who speculated, whether right or wrong, but speculated that when there's 2 out of the 3 children as an adult come out as gay, closet, there's probably something that happened there years ago. And usually that's within a family or a family member or a relative of some kind of sexual misconduct. And so that's where the allegations went back then. Dan Sr. is single to this day. there was speculation that that he is gay. Now, Kate was actively dating this Curtis individual, so it's safe to say that she was straight and David Crowley are straight. So in the entire family, the two that were straight that we know of as evidence are both 6 feet under. So there's some speculation that Drew, was she going to blow the whistle on something bigger, something much larger? Who knows what went on there in that family. But as we're all well aware, here in Minnesota, families hide things very well. The people that come out with these horrendous things are sometimes the most unlikely characters that surprise you the most of what's going on behind closed doors. But once again, that is entirely speculation on my part.
Yeah, the two being gay were another shock to us. No idea. Not the last time we saw were there any signs of that. And that, we're trying to figure out that timeline, early 2000s. But again, like you said, families can hide things, but we didn't see it.
And the same with the alcoholism. Never.
When did that?
Never did we. When we were all together, we never even drank socially together. So that in and of itself comes as a total shock to us too, that she was an alcoholic, and then able to hold two jobs. Well, again, that didn't add up for us either. So yeah.
Yeah, we had the other speculation here that we could throw into the not speculation but evidence is we have evidence that David Crowley himself did not drink that much, or when he did, it was once in a while or even socially, but he wasn't having beers or shots every night at home here working on this project. He was focused on the project. I don't believe there's any beer in the fridge or in the garage, any alcohol of some sort. Comel was a dietitian, and both of them were very healthy eaters and exercisers, and so we can throw that. I don't want to throw that out the window, but I don't think that's a big factor. Allison, the daughter, we don't know. I'm not sure about her. Dan Jr., the older brother, has I think a couple of DWIs on his record and some marijuana, small charges, minor charges, but mainly his are traffic-related, speeding when we looked it up, not paying parking tickets, things like that. So he's got a pretty lengthy record, but a couple of driving under the influence under his belt. So there could have been. Now, Kate, I think, was drinking a lot, and she may have had just a high tolerance and could have been easily a high-functioning alcoholic because she did have two jobs, and she was a healthy person. She wasn't down in depression and not getting up to work day to day. She was functioning, so that could have been. Now, we know early on it was her brother that was that police officer killed, Joe Bergeron, that you're probably familiar with. That was her brother that was killed on duty as a St. Paul police officer. Do you remember that case? I
just read about it through your Facebook. That was 5 years ago.
At the time, that was the largest, I believe that was the largest funeral procession of a law enforcement in the state of Minnesota ever had. They closed down highways for the amount of law enforcement and city officials to show support. He was in line of duty when a shooter came into I don't know if it's a pizza parlor or a cafe or something, and he was shot there while on duty. And so that was a big to-do, and that was a fairly large family that starts with a B, Bergeron. And so she was a maiden name Bergeron, and I think there was 8 or 9 kids in that family. And so her brother Joe was that very person. So if that would have led to something down the road, dealing with the aftermath of her, brother dying that way, but that is her connection to that. So a big name. And then it's her son who's now alleged to, commit this double murder suicide, and then she winds up dead, and it's her, her brother years ago that was killed. I don't know if it was 10 years ago or 15 years ago, but I think in the early 2000s that took place. So I think it's fair to say Kate Crowley more than likely was an alcoholic. Does that have anything to do with this case? I don't know. Probably not. Now we know that David recreationally smoked marijuana and maybe did some hallucinogens and maybe tried some absinthe and maybe tried some mushrooms. And that's very well could be the case. There's evidence and there's proof of that and hallucinogens in the documentary. Does that make him a murderer, or does that make him, kill the family? I think there's a lot of people out there that put two and two together and think that that's what happened, but those are the very same people that have not looked at the evidence that shows that could not have happened. So whether or not him and David and Kamel dabbled in recreational drugs, I think has nothing to do at all with this case from a forensics standpoint. Thoughts on that? Greg or Catherine?
Go ahead, Greg. You're always quiet.
Well, he might be on mute.
Am I on mute? I can't tell if I'm on mute or not.
No, now we can hear you.
Of course, when I start cussing, I'm not on mute. Sorry, Dan, can you repeat that again?
I was just going to get your thoughts on the background of these individuals, the drugs and alcohol in the family. It was minor to some extent, but it was also major for Kate. But I don't know if any of it figured into any of these things happening. Someone stumbling upon this case, what I get, and you guys can probably talk to this too, is new members to this group will watch that documentary and say, "Oh, he was a nut job, and she was from the loony bin. That both were doing drugs, both were hallucinating. Of course it happened." And so those are the types of members that I write off right away that obviously haven't done the research. And most of the ones that look at the documentary, like Jamie and Carla here, say they leave after watching that documentary scratching their heads by saying, "I don't know what it is, but something doesn't sit right. My gut does not tell me, something's wrong here." And so those are the folks that I take. I have trust and faith in because they seem to be the critical thinkers.
Yeah, I think definitely there's drugs. Okay, first of all, there weren't any drugs found in their system, so that's the first thing. So for anyone to claim that they were doing drugs or all of that stuff, there's really no proof of that, and there's they've never been caught with any drugs. There's never been anything. They had a little bit of weed in that house, but I mean, really, that is a small amount of weed. And if it came from Chris Peck, it's like if they were people who bought a lot of weed, they would have bought a much bigger set of weed, I guess, or but they didn't. It was a very small. So it just seemed like it was something that maybe David was using to kind of help him with his script as he's writing his script. There's no proof of anybody other than text messages and other than social media posts. There's no proof that they ever drank, really. I mean, if you really think about it. But all of that, to go from that to it just sounds like somebody who was reaching, somebody who was looking for anything to explain why David and Kamel did this or why just David did this, because we do have that pack theory where some people think that Kamel was involved in this too, and that they had this plan to kill themselves and to take their daughter with them. So they have to make them look crazy if they're going to go with that. And of course I'm actually shocked that there weren't any pills mentioned or anything like that. And again, there were pills found at the house. I don't know what they were. We never really found out, and they're not mentioned as far as I know. So I think all of that is just a big reach, and I never really gave it too much thought. And I think anyone that does, that's fine if they want to, but that by itself doesn't prove anything.
Yeah, I agree. And the thing about the marijuana anyway, it's like how many, being here in Colorado where it's legal, people are high 24/7 here, and I have yet to see somebody going on a murder spree. You know what I mean? And especially toward their own family members. I totally throw that off the table. I don't even think that is even a point of a period in the entire case.
Yeah, the other thing to look out for for those going back in time and reading all of the old Facebook posts and whatnot, David Crowley himself did correspond back and forth with some people talking about the amount of alcohol he's drinking and, quote, getting drunk every night of the week and whatnot. This was in the Army back in 2008 or 2009 or something. Those I haven't been dealing in the past with, like a Robert Elian, for instance, will use those quotes and take out the time stamps on those and start pushing the envelope to different people that are not well versed in this case and he will say that here's the evidence in David's own words that he was getting drunk every night of the week. And so just keep in mind the timestamps or the dates on those types of things. They are accurate. He wrote them. But that was back in the U.S. Army days and before he was even married. Now, we know that he was eating healthy and working out and exercising, and these were not the actions of him currently. So be careful of those when they take them out of context like that. Also with the weed, like Greg said, they were buying recreational amount use of weed. And as he also said, when those test results came back, there was no alcohol or drugs in any of the bodies. And we know that marijuana stays in the system roughly 30 days. And if the bodies were laying there for 3 weeks, they would certainly have marijuana in the system if they smoked it during or prior to the killings, if they were high when this took place. So I think that's safe, Catherine, like you said, we can rule that out because that's just a sidetrack distraction, is what I think. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yep.
I'd like to interject if I could.
Yes.
My name is Derek Soroka. I'm a staff sergeant in the United States Army. I've been following Catherine Michelle's videos on David Crowley's death and everything, and his family. I don't know if you guys have looked into the whole Freemason implication in his movie trailer, and if that's any type of clue or possibility to some type of cover-up, because I know there's a lot of Freemasons in the police force, and I don't know if they caught wind of what he was doing and, wanted to silence that and make it look like something else. Has anybody looked into that yet that you know of?
Greg, I'd like to have Greg answer that. He's looked into some of that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
I feel like I'm having so many audio issues. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, I've definitely looked into that, and I think there is something to it. I do believe there are connections, whether, depending on your view on Freemasons and all of that, right, and how deep all of that stuff goes. But it's definitely something worth thinking about, and it would make sense if David was part of something, why everybody is so quiet, because that's what they do, right? They take care of their own business. It's a lot easier for them to take themselves out. There's no evidence that I find that David was a Mason, and maybe Jamie and Carla can help and see if maybe Dan Crowley Sr. had any Masonic ties or, just whatever. But I do find it odd that after David's death, then all of a sudden we're starting to see some of the Gray State team showing up in the Mason gear and all of that stuff. So I definitely think it's something worth looking at. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
because
yeah, go ahead.
I know that there's what was I going to say? Sorry, I had so much planned, and I was trying not to interrupt with you guys, plus I jumped in late. But
it's all good. We're going to be here for a long time.
I research Freemasonry like crazy. I know I've talked to some people that were in, and I'm sure they're not all bad and everything. It's not a horrible organization, but it does foster a bad thing. Even within the military, we have a problem with it. The police definitely do. And it seemed like his movie implicated them, and perhaps with the guillotine at the end, maybe a key to the no-hide laws, which is a big, Zionistic thing being pushed that Trump already acknowledged and everything. However, I know that his trailer and everything was altered from what Alex Jones ended up putting out onto Netflix or whoever it was. Like, it totally revamped his trailer and took that out, I believe. So it seems like if...
Yeah, that's two separate things, right? Because the movie that David made, or the trailer, that was never made. So we don't know if David's plans were to keep the Mason and to keep all of that in, or it kind of sounded like to me like by the end, by 2014, he was going in a different way, in a more spiritual way, from what I gather. But it's just an opinion.
All right, well, that's all I had to think about. And I'm just looking out for fellow veterans. I don't like seeing guys go down if they're trying to send a message, and especially if this was murder, we need to find some clarification on that. So,
and I agree with you. I don't mean to interrupt you, but, I spent a lot of time working as an EMT, and I was volunteer for the Red Cross, and I did all of my volunteer in Army hospitals, and at the time I was married to a soldier, and who was, in the Desert Shield, Desert Storm War, and all that other stuff, and I really take our soldiers, I will protect them, especially if they're innocent. And thank you for your service, by the way. Thank you so much. I truly appreciate the fact that you're, in our military and protecting our country. But to the fact that it just seems like they're taking David's military career and his service and using it against him and using that as an excuse to blame him for this crime, and that did not sit well with me at all. David had a conscience. He had a heart. In fact, he told them he wasn't going to shoot anybody anymore. So they punished him by, putting him, I think in a mail room or something like that. So that is not the someone who behaves like that, who has that kind of a heart, is not the type of person who's going to then, quote unquote, snap and kill everybody.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. A lot of military personnel get blamed whenever there's a situation we find ourselves in, and they immediately go to PTSD, was he deployed, and just start counting off excuses as to why they're just mentally ill, and then that's the excuse.
Right?
Exactly,
and that's
what they did.
It's frustrating. I really hate it when they do that. Yeah. Because yes, those who have been to war, do suffer some PTSD, but it's not to the extent to where I have ever seen them go off and kill their families. If they're going to kill anybody, it's usually themselves, and they leave their families behind. This whole, he snapped because he killed somebody over there in Iraq or Iran, wherever he was, and now he couldn't deal with it, so he's going to kill his wife and child? I'm like, come on, people, think about what you're saying.
He was way too level-headed making the movie like he was.
Yes.
He was driven. There was no, as stressed out as he might have got, he was too goal-oriented to go the route that they say he did.
I agree.
I agree. 100%.
And I think, too, just to chime in, this is Dan, the other thing that was strange with this case is that of all of the excuses that did come out, it came out that he had PTSD. Then they said that he was mentally ill. Then it was domestic violence. Then he was a druggie. Then he was a drug addict. Then it was domestic. His record, the deaths are actually fall under the umbrella in the state of Minnesota here as domestic violence deaths. They're still recorded. And that's the other thing that we would want to get changed if they were to say that the deaths here was indeterminate as far as what happened, because to get those pulled out, because right now Comel and Ranney are homicide victims of domestic violence, which is certainly not the case. But the number of excuses that came out as all the things that he had was depression, despondent, suicidal. They threw everything at the board that would stick, and just hoping that something would stick, and that's a shame. because there's military folks out there that see that. I'm very active in some domestic violence chapters here in Minnesota that bugs me to the core to see him going down that road. And he certainly wasn't mentally ill or a drug abuser, and no PTSD. He may have had PTSD, but that certainly didn't cause this. And so they hung him out to dry and threw him under the bus, and along with any other reason they could find. That's what I think was the very interesting thing that raised my antenna. It wasn't just one or two things. They threw everything, and that was odd. I mean, even the families, both sides of the family agreed with the whole thing. Not right away, though, but they all agreed with it. And that, I think, if that was a loved one of my family, I'd say, okay, that now you're crossing the line. And they didn't do that. So it was very odd, the entire situation. But going back to the Freemason, let me interject one more thing, Greg. I think what he was asking was in particular, was David Crowley a Freemason? I think the answer there is no. He was exposing Freemason along with Illuminati and things like that, with the Bohemian Grove and the owl, and I think he was using the video with the Masons killing with the apron and all of that symbolism as a shot to expose them. Now, the people in his group, the Gray State Project, I think there's a handful of those members that we do know were involved in Freemasonry. Whether or not David knew it or not, some of those were Masons. And then what he also mentioned was the police force. And so I think the other thing that he was getting at there, which we didn't address, is I agree. I've got family and friends in law enforcement, and the Freemasonry is really huge in that, and they do cover, because it is a fraternity, and they're going to cover up not only the thin blue line of the law enforcement because of their Freemason background. So is that the reason that either the police department covered it up because they found out he was anti-Freemasonry? I think that's a fair question. Or I'm not sure if he was asking if the police were involved in commissioning the crime to kill him because of his views on that. And maybe the staff sergeant, I'm not sure what her name was, could elaborate on that, because it alluded to me that maybe you were alluding to maybe they were involved in the conspiracy to kill him, or maybe just the cover-up because of the Freemasonry views. David himself certainly was not, though. Is that what you're getting at?
Right. This is Derek, the staff sergeant. Yes.
Okay.
That's all I was referring to. That I understood that David was not a Freemason, but he was implicating them with what he had going on, and that they may have been trying to silence that. They being possibly police, or like you said, the other Gray State members.
Gotcha. Now, Greg, what's your response on that? Because he was going after those guys, and if those guys, I think Mason Hendricks already was a Mason, or was it Sean Wright, or which of these individuals were attending meetings and whatnot and posting about it on their Facebook page?
Well, Sean Wright was tagged in a few posts, I think, at a Masonic wedding, and then I think I saw a photo of Danny Mason involved in that after David's death.
Yeah, and that's very interesting.
Well, and David definitely did say in an interview that, his movie was not, it was meant to put other people in jail. So he had something he was going to bring out to the public.
Yeah,
and I know Autumn, we have Autumn on the line, and she's wanting to ask a question. Are you there, Autumn? She's having problems, I think.
I was having audio. I don't know. Having some audio.
And while we get Autumn on, I think Jamie and Carla are still on the line. There's one last thing I did want to point out back to Kate. She had the issue with the will, her missing will when she died. There was legal paperwork going back and forth saying that that her will was missing, actually missing, and then they either couldn't find it or they did end up finding it. But there was some other suspicious activity with the actual law firm that she used, could not find the original will that she had. And we've got documentation of that as well. So it's another thing to add to the irregularities. Let's call it that. All right, go ahead. Is she going to come on?
Okay, let's see. She said she tried unmuting. Can you talk now, Autumn?
Hello?
Yeah, there you go.
Hi. I just wanted to say, as a survivor of domestic violence who was in a relationship with someone who is oddly shows a lot of similarities to the case, being in the liberty movement, and I can tell you firsthand that David did not kill his wife and daughter. He was very protective. That is not how, like I said, I'm a survivor. I know how they act after studying it for a very long time of what I had gone through. And he is not that kind of character, not that personality in any kind of way. He is very protective over his loved ones. Him breaking away from certain people, he acts like a victim himself in the end, just to be clear on that, because we're often blamed as being suspicious when we do things like that, and that was the scenario where they're trying to put that over him, or even Kamel for that matter, and that's when you're being targeted. And I can tell you, and it's really funny, Greg, that you said that they protect their own. That was the exact words of when I was trying to come out about a lot of things that were going on and the corruption that was happening in this very state. And they warned me about the things that I was saying and who I was going to go to, because they protect their own here, and I better watch my back. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah,
I agree with you, Autumn. You know.
Yep, that's true. They do protect their own.
Yeah, and I want to add to that about the fact that David just does not fit the profile of a domestic abuse person. I too, like you, am a survivor of that situation, and the people who were violent toward me, I mean, they never. It's a whole different set. It's a whole different personality. And when I saw the videos of David and how he was very protective of his family, and one time when Eric Sayward, just bumped into him supposedly at a park on the 4th of July, and the camera guy's saying, "Hey, I want to go meet your daughter," and David positions his body between that man and his family. That is not somebody who is an abuser. He was like going, wait a second here. That was you could tell he was so uncomfortable with what that guy was saying. He was protecting his family from a distance.
And you know what's funny? Eric Sayward, he struck me as an abuser right from the get-go. I looked up his background, and sure enough, he is an abuser.
Yes. Yeah.
And you seriously, you really get a sixth sense after being in that kind of situation of who is like that and who is not. And Eric said, and he didn't have to utter one word. I just saw his picture, his demeanor, and then when I watched the video, I thought exactly what you did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed. And I wanted to interject something else. I know it's kind of off topic. It's on the same topic, but I mean, it's more, okay, it's been racking my brain for weeks now of the positions of the bodies and how, has anybody ever thought of like how a mafia works? Because Freemasons work in the same way. They send a message in the symbols and the signs, and there's signs all over it. And everybody keeps talking about how sloppy it was. But in my mind, I'm thinking and looking at it like, it's not sloppy. They're sending a message. And the message was, David was in the crucifix position. Kamel was shamed on her face with no head, no hands. And the daughter, but when they were laid, and you can tell that Rania was moved. She was obviously moved, and not to say that no, they weren't all placed there, or they looked like they were all placed there, but she was moved to a significant position to look like a pyramid with David at the top. I just was curious if anybody has thought of that, or maybe...
That's very interesting. I don't think we've looked into that as a group that in depth, but
no,
I like it. That's very interesting. Thank you.
Well, and I thought about that in the positions and stuff, and that's when I very first saw the photo. I'm telling you, I literally gasped, and I'm like, oh my God, something's not right here. And but then when I saw the sketch from one of the police officers, which actually shows Rania between her mom's legs, so that one of the officers had to move that her little body. But then I'm like, that's where my frustration, or I really think it was totally unethical. Why would they move her and then take that photo? That is
why was it messed with at all? It's almost as if they wanted it to be blamed on the police force so that it didn't look that way, but it is. I mean, everything in that scene, it looks like, okay, I know it's not a gang, but I mean, they all have, I mean, even the Catholic Church, they have their own way of marking a hit. That was, in my, I've been looking into this stuff for a very long time. And
it's interesting that you
looks
bring
like
up
a hit, and they're showing it in the symbols of how they laid out the scene.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought up the fact of it being, the mob. I've only had one other person mention that to me, and it was a police officer. And in fact, they stated they're like going, I can't remember where this officer is from. I've talked to so many. If I remember, I'll let you know. But they're looking at the photo and they're just like going, was this a mob hit? And I'm like, I don't think so. I don't know why, but they're just like, well, this just doesn't look right. If I were you, I would leave this alone.
Well, yeah, and I don't even necessarily mean mob. I mean, they all work that way. Every secret society, they have a way of setting their own symbols and marking. Like, I won't bring up a certain name, but I will just say doorknobs, and maybe you'll catch my drift. But that's one way of marking a hit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? By a certain group, individuals, family, what have you.
Yeah.
I just thought that was eerie.
Yeah, and I've never been able to place, just from the moment I saw the photo, it's like, I can't even describe. It was the eeriest, weirdest feeling that has never left me. But it was not, and that's what I'm like when I had to really look into this case, because I'm like going, something evil is afoot. That's all I know.
And nothing makes sense. I mean, do we even really truly know that David had a shot to the head, or was like? Yes,
there is an exit wound that was still left in the part of his skull that remained. They were able to find the exit wound.
I couldn't find it in the autopsy if they even tried to test if any of this stuff was done post-mortem.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
And that's something we don't know because we don't have access to the full medical examiner's report. And, we have no idea. We don't, and that's what's frustrating. They didn't test for any gunpowder residue, and they're not telling us, was, like you said, was this post-mortem? Was this peri-mortem? When were they shot? They tell us nothing.
And, the blood splatter. Only the blood splatter. That was the other question. I mean, I don't know if that's a question more than a statement, but if you're shot in the head, it's maximum velocity, correct?
Yes, it's high velocity.
And if you're hit in the head, it's medium, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And the blood spatter patterns, at least the ones that I have seen, are all medium velocity. I have not seen any high velocity that corresponds with a gunshot wound, let alone 4 gunshots to the head.
Right.
It's totally missing.
Yeah, where's all the blood? I mean, I'm. It's really gross to have that statement, but I mean, wouldn't that be a question for the scene? Like, why would they think that, I mean, I'm not a police officer, but I would question, where's all the blood? I mean, you bleed the most from your head, if you actually, you know what I mean, or from the stomach, at least from the little that I know.
Yes.
There would be more blood.
Yeah. I agree, and they just they refuse to give any answers to any of that.
Oh, I don't imagine they will. Like you said, they protect their own. And I was also curious too. Is anybody in here aware of what they call Rule 100? I know they practice it in Minnesota.
What is that? I don't know what that is.
Mm-mm.
Where they're not allowed to have like local low registering police officers are not they're not allowed to be hired as low ranking officers unless they're below 100 on their IQ.
Interesting.
I know that
I'm
sounds
not
really
aware of that
silly,
either.
but it's a thing. I know it sounds silly, but it is a thing. It's called Rule 100. Because I just thought how, like, I lived up north. I've lived in the cities. I've lived down now in southern Minnesota, and everywhere I've been in Minnesota, I swear, like they and this is no offense. There are many good people on the force that I've met everywhere. But when I heard, especially up north, there was a guy who had already tried, to kill his ex-wife, and he was being allowed on the force. And he was known around town as being one of, people thought he was retarded because he was just so dim, to have it be put politely. But then someone told me about Rule 100, and that's why they do that, because they don't want anybody that's more intelligent to be able to, I don't know.
That's the frustrating thing to me, is because when I spoke with Sergeant Detective Gummert, he's a very smart man. He was very intelligent, and he did not come across as anyone slow or anything like that. But that's interesting. I'll have to look into that some more.
But he's
I don't mean to cut you off, but Donna has some questions.
Hello.
Donna, are you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi, Donna.
Hi, guys. Thanks so much for all you do. It's amazing. Very honored to be part of this exciting group. I wanted to ask about Judy, right? I'm wondering if she more or less set the bar for the entire investigation, because we all know her nature. She's really willing to get involved and absorbed and to explain things in the way she understands it. And I'm wondering if it kind of started that way with the police and everything that followed, that it was believed from the beginning that David murdered his family and then himself, and then right from there on, right to the autopsy, that everybody was convinced that's what it was. So there was no extra involvement in pursuing this case.
Well, she was definitely the first person to ever mention murder or a suicide, the first person to ever mention the dog eating these bodies.
Right.
So she did set that stage. Now, whether she did that on purpose or whether she's just, that's how great she really is, I don't know. But it all started there. It doesn't matter if it was intentional or if it's a coincidence. It all started there. I think there's no doubt. And that's what made it weird when Colin was talking about the mannequins, because that really threw everything off. Was like what? What are you talking about here? I mean, how do you look in that window and see that? But And then Judy, that's not what Judy said. But then when she was questioned about it, I think later on she did say, and I think, Donna, you were the one who sent me those links. Thank you for that, for those timestamps, because it's hard for me to go back and listen to that talk that Judy and I did. So I definitely appreciate that. But I think she did say that at first she also thought that. She also thought that they weren't real bodies. She makes it clear to say that Colin saw the gun, but she didn't see that gun either. I don't know. So, you know, I can see all sides of it. I do think it's weird, but there's no doubt that she was the first one that mentioned that, and obviously, dispatch is going to tell the cops that are going there. It's all in their reports, so that's where it all starts. I don't know.
Right. It just seems to me that she's following us on this case so closely. And that gives me that impression that her personality that comes across very strong, that she's very convincing or wants to be convincing. And, you know, just said this is what it probably is, and that's where the police and the whole case went to. Because really, it's almost like you said, the police decided this when they came there. When they first arrived, this was double murder-suicide, right?
Well, I think it took them 24 hours, but within 24 hours.
Right, but, you know, like things like, you know, the edge of that chair with all that blood, like, why would they not check something like that? You know?
I agree. They didn't check enough of the blood. And Greg and I are going to go back and forth on this one. He's going with the 24 hours, and I'm going to keep the captain to his little quote in the newspaper where it said within 2 hours. It's like, you know, they never retracted that. But anyway, in a very short amount of time, they decided it was a double murder suicide. But you're right. There's blood that should have been tested. There are passive blood droppings in the kitchen close to the dishwasher and on the dishwasher that I spoke with someone about that, a police officer, or maybe that one was the blood spatter analyst. I can't remember. Oh, see, I have to start taking notes on people I talk to. But anyway, they said that blood was more than likely, it came from the perpetrator and not the victims. And so it was never tested as far as we know.
Wow.
Catherine, can you send me that? Because I want to see that quote. I want to see where he said that.
Yeah, it's in the newspaper. I will definitely send it to you.
Okay.
Can I ask just one more thing?
Sure.
I'm confused about the comings and goings right after the murders. Like, I just don't really get it. Where Chris Pett comes in, and I just don't get it.
You don't get why they were in the house on January 19th?
No, I don't get the order of how it happened. Like, the cleaners were there and they weren't there. I don't know. Like, I don't understand. Like, the bodies were found. Then the next day, somebody had come in and claimed they're looking for exercise equipment, and then they found the bullet hole in the ceiling.
Yeah, there was a 911 call, and that 911 call came in January 19th. And I had assumed that the cleaners were there, but obviously they weren't there at that time, which is weird because the cleaners are there a day later on January 20th, I believe, when they find a bullet that rolls out of a carpet. So maybe they were off and on cleaning, and people knew when they were cleaning and when they weren't going to actually be there, and they knew when to go in there and for what. I don't know why they were there. They should not have been there. At that point, they should have all been suspects. And really, the main thing is because their stories did not match, their stories do not line up. They're saying that Chris Klein is who we're talking about. Chris Klein says that he was in the house with Dan Crowley Sr. and Dan Crowley Jr., and when the police asked Dan Crowley Sr., he says no, that he was not there, and the police never follow up on it, and they had no intention of ever following up on it. And I think that pretty much tells us the way that this investigation was was going. I think once the higher ups say, okay, this is the story, everybody else has to get in line. All of the other cops, all of those other detectives, they better get in line or else there's going to be trouble. And that's the way that I took that. So if that happened within 2 hours, definitely that's even worse than I thought.
I just sent you the link showing you the
Thank
article. Yeah, the article states, despite the grisly scene, investigators concluded within 2 hours that David Crowley was the one who pulled the trigger of the .40 caliber Springfield handgun found next to his body.
Jeez. Crazy.
And that's so unprofessional. It's not even funny.
That's unheard of.
Yes.
Because the other thing, okay, we'll compare that to when the first report came out. I need to look. Let's look that one up. See, when did the first media press release come out? Because I know the second one is the one that said that it was definitely, they were treating it as a murder-suicide. But the first one said that it was just suspicious deaths. Oh, that's interesting. I'm gonna look.
So why would they take a full year before closing the case, but not analyzing everything that's significant? Like, why would they close it a whole year later? Is that mandatory, or?
I think they had so much stuff to, just my view on it, but I think they had so much stuff to go through. And I think if they would have actually done their job, and if certain investigators would have been able to do their job thoroughly and properly, I think it actually would have taken longer.
Right. Yeah.
So the first press release came out at 3:30 p.m. on January 17th. See, then they got the call at 12:56. So this would be right around the time. That's the problem, I think, is even those timelines don't match up because they're telling the media, if I'm reading this right, Catherine, they're telling the media that, within 1, 2, 3, yeah, I guess, that's really earlier. It's I don't know. It's things like that. I think they just throw sand in our eyes sometimes just to make it difficult for real researchers and hope that we just give up. And just give up and just move on and don't worry about it. Life is good. And Mason Hendricks actually told me that at some point. And it was like, just go out, just go and enjoy life. Life is great. This and that. Like, life is not great. If a 5-year-old child can be murdered, can be killed, and nobody cares. You guys are all this family, all these friends. They don't care. They obviously don't care, or else they would have put more effort, more time into this. They'd be right here with us right now, and at this point, this case would not be closed. We would have this case changed.
Agreed. And that's, like you said, that's something I find really hard to understand. A child, their niece, their granddaughter, their supposed friend's child that their children played with, and they're all content to turn their back and walk away. And I do not understand it.
It's terrible. It's frustrating.
Can I throw a question in here really quick from Robin?
Yes.
Okay, she wanted me to ask, and this is probably something Dan will have to answer. She said she wanted to know about the money, the $50,000, and she was wondering if anybody had looked into or thought about, or is it a possibility that money could have been pulled out, maybe, I don't know, if the money was pulled out and was going to be used as a ransom, a payment.
Boy, good question. I don't think we've ever looked at it that way that I'm aware of. It could have been discussed in the group, but I haven't looked into that as a potential ransom at all. We can't rule it out. We certainly can't rule it out.
Yeah, and that was interesting.
the timing is the key thing there, because it took place in October, which would indicate, regardless of what it was used for, there's premeditation in the entire scenario. And that's really when it gets bad. If we've got premeditation in this situation, which I think there was, but it eliminates someone snapped or someone came in to assault David or question him and then flew off the handle and ended up killing him. That's what we need to get down to, was this a premeditated thing, or was this just off the handle? And the evidence that we have so far, I believe, suggests that everything was premeditated. Whether it was a ransom or not, there was the fact that money was pulled out in the month of October. Bodies were supposedly killed in December. That's a 2-month time frame that people were maneuvering and getting things prepped for all of this, including members of David's own family. And so that's where it really goes down a nasty, rabbit hole. But it could have been. I don't know how that would have played out, but it's worth looking into.
Yeah, because they would have had to have known way in advance they were going to need a ransom. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
The other question that was asked just a few minutes ago was the timing of things, and I just want to clarify a couple of things. One is the question, we're wondering if people were in and out of the house while the cleaners were still on the job, and we should clarify it that way. Not if they were there at the particular time of that day, but if the cleaners were there, typically a case like this would be 2 to 3 days or up to a week to clean. Regardless of once they start or open the scene to clean, it's under my understanding that is quarantined or cordoned off until they're completely done and they exit the premises. Not for that day, but when they close up shop and leave. And in between that window, no one, including detectives, I think, can enter that scene at all. And so that's our first problem. We know that they were there. The bodies were there on Saturday the 17th is when the bodies were discovered. Nothing happened the 18th on that Sunday. And the 19th, I think, is when the cleaners came on the 19th, the morning of the 19th, or even the evening of the 18th. The problem is we've got Chris Klein and others in their house on the 19th that's been proven from the 911 call. And then the cleaners, I think, left on the 20th. So that has never been explained satisfactorily by anyone, because, and others can chime in here too, but when a professional cleaning crew of cleaning up a biohazard scene like that, I don't think even family members can come and interject that scene and even come into the scene while they're there. Now, they may come and go during the day, but once they're actually done and finalized and closed that scene, I think it's then officially that's released then to the public or released to the police then to open it up to make it, available. But those guys should not have been there. Now, everyone that we've called out publicly that has answered us asking that question, they all said that we were never in the house while the cleaners were in process of cleaning. Or in other words, during that 3-day window, we were never in that home. We were only in the home after the cleaners were officially closed out and done. So there's a discrepancy there. Because they can't be in the house during it, but they have on record say that they were there. So that's a question. Now, the exercise equipment is a good point. I think they came and backed up a pickup truck to get exercise equipment out in that same week, but later on. That wasn't part of the 19th. That was a separate time to pick up the exercise equipment. The first time they were there, I think, was to start packing or cleaning up or start, quote, organizing some things in the house, which still wouldn't make sense after a triple homicide, that they'd be there 3 days later before the memorial, the obituary was written, anything was even done. They're there organizing, the house. That doesn't make sense. That to me is a lie. That cannot be. Now, when they said later on that week that they were there retrieving exercise equipment, they said that, this was Mason Hendricks, they said that because they said that the police had told them that there's crazies out there, including this group of conspiracy people, and they're kind of wacky nut jobs. You may want to get anything of any value out of that home because there's some creepy people going to come and steal it. And so Mason said, I believe his words were gym equipment, exercise equipment, and televisions or TVs, anything worth value. So what we did, and this is where it gets to be kind of comical, what we did is go back and look at all of the crime scene photos in the house that were taken by police the day the bodies were found. There's not a TV in that house. There is no exercise equipment in that house. There's no gym equipment in that house. There may have been small things that we may have missed by looking at it, dumbbells, weights, small things. But anything that small would not have required a pickup truck, and Mason Hendricks says we had to use a pickup truck to load this all up. There was no workout equipment in the home. That begs the next question. Mason now is telling us misinformation or disinformation. It gets back to the dog water bowls and food bowls. There are none in the house. So why wouldn't a dog have a water or a food dish? Why would there be no workout equipment, and why no TVs? Well, David and Kamel, I don't think, had or owned a TV because they were awake. They knew what was going on. They weren't going to, fall for that. But the workout equipment, that was a reason to get into that house, to take it out. The question is, and where they backed themselves into a corner, is that there was no workout equipment to begin with.
What did they really take? Yeah, if I'm curious about what they really took.
Well, that's the question. They were there looking for other things, I think, and taking other things, and firing a potential weapon into the ceiling on the 19th, and then just call out the police to say that they missed it. Why would family members know what police missed or did not miss? That's the other mistake they made.
Yeah.
They knew police missed a hole in the ceiling. Well, these guys would not have known what the police missed or did not miss. Family would have been aware of what the police were suspecting happened, but they would have said, there's no way they can't believe they missed this bullet hole. These individuals would not have known that there was a bullet hole to be missed. So I believe that is enough evidence to suggest that they fired it on the 19th. That's why they needed to get in the house.
Yeah, see, and I agree with you, Dan. That was such a huge red flag to have them call the police and say, oh, by the way, there's a bullet hole here. That's like, okay, how do you know they didn't already know about that or didn't know about it? But, yeah. And Taylor has
a big red flag.
Taylor, what's your question? Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's more or less not a question.
Okay.
So, Greg had gotten me to go on Google Maps and actually look at the placement of the Crowley house along with a couple of the neighbors. I have here Brett Millay, I think it is. Anne-Marie Hickson, Alan Olson, Teresa Shepard, and Mark Torelson. Now, Brett Millay was at 1048 Ramsdale Drive, or Ramsdale. He said that he's seen David closing the blinds in the dark. I guess it was nighttime when he had seen it. But in my mind, and just by looking at the placement of Brett's house and David's house, there's no, excuse my language, there's no fucking way he could see it at all.
Yeah, he said, Brett, not to interrupt you, but Brett Millay was saying that he stared at David. He lived directly across the street from him and stared at David. They had looked at each other for a long time, and then somebody started to close their curtains, and one of them turned around and walked away. But yeah, so the position of the houses is not such that Brett Millay is across the street from David?
Well, he's across the street, but he's not directly straight on across the street. He's more about I'd say a 90 to 120 degree angle to his house. And all of his all of his windows are basically, in my mind, too small to see. They're all too small to be able to see even into David's big window. Plus, there's quite a few trees that are in the way of the view. The only way that I could think he would have any kind of view in it would be that David has LEDs in his ceiling light. And obviously that's probably not possible. So I just don't think it's plausible to be able to think that he would actually be able to see David, especially in the dark.
Yeah, this is around sometime between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. on Christmas Eve. And Brett tells us, or told the police, that he made eye contact with David. And then, or he didn't specifically say he made eye contact, but he does say that from where he was standing in his house, he could see David standing, and somehow they were able to see each other. And then Brett closes his shades, and he says David walks away. Well, the way that it's written makes you think that Brett closed his shades first, and then David walked away. But obviously that's not possible because it's from Brett's point. But then, then I asked Taylor to look up and see where Brett was living, what the front windows are. And if you look at all of those front windows, it's not impossible, but it's very difficult to think that Brett could actually see David, and vice versa.
Definitely.
Maybe one saw the other. Maybe he saw David, and maybe he thought David was looking at him, and David wasn't. But it's really hard to think that they both saw each other, had that moment, and then turned and walked back. And the other weird thing was that when the police went back to talk with Brett, that they reported that he wasn't there. So there's questions about that too.
Yeah.
But looking at those windows, it's really hard for me. Like, where would David have to be standing, and where would Brett have to be standing in order for this to even happen? And when you look at the map, like I said, it's not impossible, but it's kind of odd.
And Greg even has the video that I'm sure he can forward to you guys, Catherine and Dan. But even aside from the fact of, like, the positions of where they would be standing, even in my mind, I have a pretty big window in my place, and if I look out the window and there was a house across the street, there's no way, with two big trees in the way and the angle of the houses, there's absolutely no freaking way you'd be able to see past that. It's just this one tree stump that keeps hitting me, and it's not, I don't know, it's just not rubbing me the right way, and I don't think it's plausible.
Is it possible because it was snow? I have to remember, it was snowing then, so obviously there's nothing on those trees by the tree trunks. Maybe that's...
You know what? I'm looking at the map too. I just now pulled it up, and you are correct. Directly across the street from David's window is the yard. Everybody else is like kitty corner. So.
Yeah.
And that's not even Brett's house right there, across the street, which is what I thought it was at first, but it's not.
No, Brett's house is to the left. His is to the left on, like, the corner, the little bend there. His is there.
His is closer to where David's mailbox is, actually, right?
Yeah, his driveway is at 1048. But
yeah, you're right. There's no way. There's no way for him to see.
No, and even like, when you look at Google Maps, obviously it's all summertime, but even if you look at the pictures on the page, I found one of David's front yard and the one across the street. Even in the winter, you wouldn't be able to see past that tree because it's too grown up too far, and all the branches spark out after about the window height.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
that's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, so that doesn't rub me right. And then, me and Greg kind of got into it, and we were thinking, okay, well, what about the rest of the neighbors? So I went and I looked up Anne-Marie Hickston, which is at 1052, which I'm pretty sure is to the right of Brett Millay. I'm not mistaken. Pretty sure. Anyway, she's more likely to have seen something than he was, because due to the closer proximity of the house and along with like the clearer vision that she had, because she didn't have as many trees in front of her house, and David only had that one. No, I don't even think he had a. No, maybe he did, but it was like farther down the property. She had a direct line of sight, as far as I can remember. She had a direct line of sight to his big bay front window. So as far as I know, she would be more of likely of a person to be able to see in his window, but I don't think she ever really made a statement on what she had seen, because I don't think she really seen much.
I'm pulling that up right now to see what Anne Marie Hickson says.
Because I know looking at her place, she had more of like I guess she had like somewhat bigger windows, not very much bigger as far as I can remember, but
yeah, she's the one who said that there was she indicated that she noticed that there was a certain light or a candle that has come on every day since Christmas, and that's in page 13 of the Apple Valley Police report. If anybody wants to go check that out.
And then that also brings me on to Alan Olson, which he is the neighbor that heard the shots, the 3 shots. I don't remember what night it was.
Well, he wasn't sure either. He didn't know.
So, in my mind, there is absolutely, and I even have it written here on my sheet, there is absolutely no way he could see anything. Fence and trees blocking vision of anything that could be plausible. So, basically, when you look at Alan Olson, I think he's behind David's house, so he's at 1074 Lowell Drive.
Yes.
I think he's to the right-hand side. If I'm not mistaken, he's to the right. So, because of the fences and because of the trees are well sprung out. Like, they're high and the branches come out. Like, they're like a regular huge tree that you would see. This is the tree that's in the back of David's house. Plus, like, I'm pretty sure his windows are not big enough to be able to, like, see a lot.
Well, he's the one that just heard it, right? So he's the one that heard three rapid fire shots. But if you look at the distance from where his house is compared to where David's house is, if he heard 3 rapid fire shots, a lot of the other neighbors should have too, right?
Exactly. Another thing I have with that is if you hear 3 gunshots in such a rural neighborhood that's like this, I would think that you would call the police and make a statement, right? Or just tell them at least to give them a heads up that something's happening, or
yes.
Is that just me?
No, they even asked him that at some point, because I think he said that he didn't call. No, actually no. Teresa Shepard. So Teresa Shepard is the other one who lived on Lowell Drive.
1066. Yeah, 1066.
And she's the one who saw the rear slider open when she came home from vacation around December 23rd, meaning that rear slider had been open for a long time.
Yeah, I have her down here too.
And that's on Apple Valley Police Reports, page 56, if anybody wants to look at that. I think it's definitely worth looking at. It's worth looking at all of these neighbors. Some heard stuff, some saw stuff, but, even hearing 3 rapid-fire shots where we're talking about Alan Olson, and he could not say exactly when it was, but he pretty much said that it was around Christmas Day, and it was definitely before New Year's Eve. Now, Olson was home from 1 p.m. on December 24th, 2014 through 1 p.m. on Christmas Day. So it's possible it was sometime around then. It's just weird that he says it was definitely before the New Year's Eve. Now, what's also interesting is we're only getting the summary of what is said to the Apple Valley Police. We're not getting what Olson says. We're not getting what Shepard says. We're not getting what they really say. And I think Dan Hennen has actually asked for some of those recordings, if I remember correctly. But it would be good to have a strategy to try to. I know we can't get those recordings, but why couldn't we get the transcripts of those recordings, similar to the 911 call?
Exactly.
So we need a good game plan for that too, I think.
Now bringing me back to Teresa Shepard. She's at 1066. I think she's left of. Yeah. Anyway, I have. She, like you said, Greg, she did see the back slider open. In my opinion, obviously this is all speculation, I don't think she could have seen the door completely open. Like, I think it was too close for her to be able to see anything, but maybe, I don't know, it could be possible. But I feel like her vision could be distorted due to the fencing that David had in the backyard. Plus, it would have had to have been the right time of day for her to be able to see anything useful. Because I guess I don't know, I'm trying to think about a good way to explain it. If I try, like, I don't remember what kind of fence David had. I think he had the chain link, right? Anyway, there was a fence in David's backyard, and
it was a fence, but it was a chain link fence, yeah. And those fences are very, very small. It looks like everybody can see everybody else's backyard, which to me that would not work for me. I like having my high fence.
Yeah, me too. But I don't know. To me, I feel like it would have to be the right time of day for her to be able to actually see anything. But it could be plausible. It is possible. That's just my opinion on looking at Google Maps and whatever. Like, and it's obviously not extremely correct because it's. I'm not there.
Right.
And we don't know what she did, even if it was dark and if she turned on her porch light, you can still see, because when I turn on my back deck light, I can see my neighbor's backyard. Yeah. So we don't have enough information from her to really determine the whole scenario.
Exactly. And then that brings me to Mark Torkelson. I don't know how to say it. This is the father and the daughter, and they lived at 1070, which is directly behind the Crowley house. Yes. Now, from the police report, I had taken like a quote out of the report from him, and I guess this is his daughter saying that they had basically spoken to the homeowner, which said that the residents of 1051 Ramsdale Drive had been dark since around Christmas, and that they hadn't seen the occupants in a long time other than the room in the back of the house, and the lights on the back of the neighbor's house would shine into her room if they were on. She said that anyone at the house since the weekend before Christmas, school break, which started 12/19/15, she said she believed that the daughter had started school and that the mom was a stay-at-home mom. Said she had never heard the couple fight and that she used to see the husband running around the neighborhood. Lastly, said the mother talked about having her babysit the daughter, but she said that she didn't think he liked her and whatever. So basically, to make it make any sense to me, and let me just go off topic, these police reports, their spelling sucks. Like, I had such a hard problem. Like, I took it, I copied and pasted it onto Google Docs, and I had to literally go through it to make sure that everything was spelled properly so I could read it myself.
Well, that's because you're a Canadian. That's why. That's what's going on there.
Hey, I'm offended,
just kidding.
Okay?
I'm just kidding. You know I'm kidding.
But
they also got a date wrong because remember he said 2015, 12/19/2015, when really he did mean 12/19/2014.
Yeah. So basically, what they're saying in my opinion, is like the daughter had seen their backlight shining on, like, in her window, but said that she hadn't seen it since before Christmas break, which was the 12/19, so it was obviously December 19th.
Right.
So that would pretty much mean that they basically went completely dark in the house and didn't have any lights on, wasn't letting the dog out the back, you know, whatever. And to me, that does not sound right, because just motherly instincts. I mean, if you think about the way that Kamel was with Raina, I would not want my daughter sitting in the dark.
Maybe they were in the basement. I don't know.
Maybe, but I don't know. Yeah. Being in the basement all freaking day and all freaking night, that I don't know. That doesn't.
It's not normal.
No,
be a hostage situation at that point. But.
No, it doesn't sound right. Anyway, another thing I wanted to bring up, aside from all of the neighbors and stuff like that, was the hand sign. Now, looking at the pictures on the group, I don't remember what number it was, but there was a picture of the tree. I think you sent it to me, Greg. There was a picture of the tree, and you can see David's hand in the side. Now, I was looking at it, and I was looking specifically at his hand, and something to me, it doesn't look right to me, because if you look at his hand, it's literally in like a, I don't even know.
You're talking about sign. BCA 4777, which shows David's left hand on the ground in a weird spot where his, what would that be?
His index finger and his thumb are touching, but then his 3 fingers are upwards.
Now, you bring up a good thing right there, and I hate to really, bring this up right now, but is that consistent for the people who have seen the image of the 3 bodies? Is David's hand in that photo consistent with how David's hand is in the image of the 3 bodies? Because they should match, and I have not looked at that yet to make sure that they do match.
Run that by me again.
So if you look at image BCA 4777 and you look at David Crowley's left hand, and if you compare that to the one image that we have that shows all of the 3 bodies in the living room, can you see David's hand? I believe you can see David's hand in that photo too.
It's
and
in the
do they match?
Right.
Oh, I see.
In the middle.
As it should
now,
be.
If you look at his hand, just kind of to go back, just to quickly make the point. Sorry, Greg, I didn't mean.
That's okay. No, I was interrupting you. That's all I wanted to say. That's it.
Now, I took it upon, obviously myself, and I looked up any kind of offensive hand signs to certain religions or something amongst that, and I looked up specifically the Muslim, what would be offensive in their religion itself. And it actually turns out that this hand sign is actually very, very offensive in the Muslim religion, because it does mean it's basically the sign of the devil. It's having your fingers like that. It's 666. Technically, in the Muslim religion, they believe that this is very not. I don't know how to explain that. I don't know. It's more or less like they find it offensive because it means something that is very satanistic to them, I guess, if that's even a freaking word. But I had noticed that when me and Greg and I were talking, and I don't know, I thought that the hand placement was kind of weird, along with the writing on the wall.
Well, and I want to address that here really quick. I've seen a lot of dead bodies. I lost count. And I have never seen a hand in that position that goes in that position naturally after death, ever.
Exactly.
And so that hand to me was positioned after his death, and how they got that to stay, they're good. Whoever did it did a good job. I don't know how they did that, but that is not a natural hand position for someone who has died. And Greg, I just looked at the photo, and yes, they do match.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for that, because I didn't want to go have to look at it.
Yeah.
No, my thing about the hand is like usually when you have hands, like when somebody has died, or especially the way that they say that David's passed away, your hands do not, just like you said, Catherine, your hands do not land like that. There is no way.
No.
Now, I think to me, that's kind of compelling evidence.
Yeah.
Because that kind of tells me that someone had basically written on the wall, open the, how do you say it, Quran, the Muslim technical Bible. I don't know how to say it properly. But
the Quran.
Yeah, having that open, especially in between all their bodies, and along with the writing on the wall, plus the writing on the notepad. That kind of, I don't know, that rubs me the wrong way, because I don't think anybody lands like that, and then especially after writing that on the wall, writing it on the notepad, and then having the Quran open on the floor with with certain pages ripped out. I don't know. To me, it just sounds completely.
I think it's also where the pages were found too, because there was some pages found on the other side of Kamel. So it wasn't like the pages were all just ripped in one place. The pages were pretty much scattered out throughout the whole living room floor, if you really look at it, which again is also odd too.
And that kind of brings me back to my theory of, I'm pretty sure somebody was trying to pick off Kamel's father or something, leaving some kind of mark to say, hey, I was here, you know who I am, but you're not going to tell anybody because you're afraid that you're going to be next, kind of thing.
Yep.
Okay, I want to bring Autumn back. She had another question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Autumn, are you still with us?
I'm here.
Okay.
I don't know if they're good questions, but I guess there are two. Sorry. If anybody noticed in the master bedroom, there's a lot of movement with the vacuum and them going back into the attic, which leads back to what we were talking about before. Mm-hmm. There's wires going up into the attic, and from what I could tell from looking at the photos, it doesn't lead to like a Wi-Fi or anything like that. And David strikes me as somebody who would be prepared. He obviously wasn't everywhere else in his life, so why wouldn't he have a camera? And maybe that would be why they went back into the attic. And I got one more. Why did the police go through such trouble to take photos of the sketchers that were by the front door, of the markings on the bottom, of their markings on their shoes, without taking markings of all the leading paths? And there's quite a few in the backyard, leading out of the backyard. There's a lot of tracks back there. But they didn't take any photos of the track, at least that we know of.
True.
I had that same question. That definitely strikes me odd. It's like, I would understand why they would take photos of the bottom of their shoes to rule out who was walking where, but then where are the photos of the tracks in the snow? Hello?
Right. Where do they lead?
And as far as the camera, a lot of us, we were just talking about that recently. It's, we've all said the same thing. Was there a camera inside the house, and did somebody take it? I don't think we really know. Do you, Dan or Greg, know anything about that?
Nothing verifiable that I've found. I don't know. I think Dan might say that it's maybe not as common as, as like the cameras that are out now. I have to remember this was back in 2014, so.
Yeah. Is Dan still on the line?
Yeah, I think he's, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm not that I'm aware of about that. Sorry, I was on mute.
Okay.
I wanted to say too, my ex he owned, and well, before that he managed and then owned his own crime scene cleanup business, and Dan is right on. No one is allowed in or out of that until they are finished. So I just wanted to add that and clarify what he said.
Good, thank you.
Okay.
Good to know.
I guess that was all.
Okay, thank you for your question.
Very good.
Thank you.
That was great. So who do we got next? Who else has something here that they want to share, they want to say, or add, contribute?
If you guys don't mind, this is Derek again from the Army.
Hey,
just want to let you guys know that when I go back to meet my soldiers this month, or in next month, sorry, I'm going to let them know all about this case and the stuff that you guys have brought up. And I wanted to say God bless to all of you for all the work you have done. Not only to the family, the Crowley family, and everybody involved with that, but also for all the veterans, all the military, you, Catherine, with the EMT. I know that's a hard job. Me being in the Army in multiple deployments, I don't want to be EMT. No, thank you.
Yeah, and it was hard being an EMT on the Army base. I don't know if you guys remember, but at Fort Bragg, they had a plane crash on the tarmac into a C-5. And then we also had the 82nd Airborne, who the whole division, they went and did a jump at a wind shear, threw them all to the ground. But the worst one was the guys who were burnt from the plane crash on the tarmac. And yeah, it's a rough job, but I'm telling you, you soldiers, I have so much respect for you, and thank you again so much for your service. And tell your guys thank you too. I really appreciate it.
Will do. And if there's anything you guys need from me or anything that we can do on our end, let me know. I'm going to spread the word as far as I can and do research too, and I'll let you know if I find out anything.
Derek, I have one question. I don't know if you can help with this, but is there any, how, if we wanted to find something more about David's past, about his service, about stuff like that, do we have any chance of getting any of that data that might help us understand his service or anything like that, or am I just wasting my time looking for it?
That's going to be very hard to find. If we can find somebody from his unit that he went with, that's the best we can do, because we can't access his military files. That's unless we can get with a family member that may have hard copies of it. We won't be able to get any online access to it.
Gotcha.
Derek, we do have his DD 214 record on the Facebook page, but that's about the extent of it. Have you looked at that? I'd like to get your input.
I have not seen it. But what we could do with that, if I can find out his unit, we can contact the unit, see if there's a Facebook page that they have. We have Facebook pages too in the Army, so and see if there's any veterans there that served with him, and then we can start cracking the code on that.
That's a great idea.
I think there is. I think someone did find the Facebook page and showed some posts and links to it, but this could have been a year or two back, but his unit, there was, I believe, a Facebook page.
Okay. All right, well, it's getting super late on my side of the country, so you guys have a good night, and I wish you all well.
Thank you, Derek.
God bless, and thank you for everything.
That was good. That's very good stuff to have an individual like that on a call like this, because it really shed a lot of light. It's getting late here myself too. I've got one more question or comment, and then I think I'm going to jump off the call and have you guys discuss it. But it has come up several times, and for the new members, the Facebook posts that were deleted on David Crowley's personal Facebook page is a huge issue and a huge red flag, and there is a lot of I guess speculation around that. I just wanted to comment on some things I was thinking about today before the call. His personal Facebook page had comments deleted after the bodies were found. Now, his laptop would have been in the possession at that time of the Dakota County Electronic Crimes Unit. And David, much like I think a lot of us keep our primary computer just logged into our Facebook account. I don't think we log out and log in each time. So if he had it up, whoever accessed the computer going into the Facebook could have had access to do so. Now, I'm not implying that the Dakota County Crimes Unit did the deleting, but I'm also not ruling them out. Now, there was no one else who had access to David's accounts that we know of. Now, we know that there was a password list that was left out. And so we know that police would have had access to that password list, but no one else. Now, we're led to believe from hearing from Sean Wright and Mason Hendricks that anyone could have gotten into any of his accounts because the password list was in the crime scene photos and anyone could have seen that. Well, the crime scene photos became public once we got that back from the FOIA request, which was, I believe, a year later, or after the investigation became final. So their claim that someone could have just used that password list to hack his account is not correct because that wasn't public until the year 2016.
And it had already been deleted by then, correct?
It was already deleted. So someone did the deleting in between time. So I also think it's fair to say whoever was in there committing the crimes or the murders, who I think set that password list out on purpose, probably took a screenshot of it or a photo with their camera, and then left, and it's just and was able to play that card to say, well, obviously other people could have gotten in there to do that. The point I'm trying to make is no one had access to that information. So if David's computer was logged in on his laptop, it may have been logged in also automatically on his cell phone or his smartphone and potentially that Microsoft Surface Pro. Now, all of those three things were in the possession of the law enforcement. So someone on another computer somewhere else would have had to log in using David Crowley's credentials, which I call hacking. Someone else would have had to log in to delete those posts on his personal Facebook page. So regardless of how things could have happened, I still believe if we rule out that it was the Dakota County Crimes Electronic Unit, and perhaps they are the ones who deleted it, that now leads back to a police cover-up. But let's assume that they didn't and they were honest and forthright. Someone still hacked in to do that deletion. If I was a Apple Valley Police detective or investigator, would have then seen this information that we widely shared that the posts were deleted and gone back to Facebook, and you were able at that point to get the IP address of the actual time, date, and location of those posts being deleted and go back to that IP address of actually who did the deleting. Now, they never followed up on that, and I do believe it's too late to get at that stuff now, but there was also speculation that once the computer came back, Dan Crowley Sr. gave it to Mason Hendricks to tinker around with, and he did the deleting. Well, I think we have to rule that out because the computer didn't come back for months later from the Electronic Crimes Unit into the possession of the Crowley family. These posts were deleted the very next month, I think sometime in February 2015. So once again, what we've got is a series of misinformation and disinformation. Mason Hendricks or Dan Crowley Sr. or Jr. could not have deleted it once they got the laptop back in their possession because that would have taken months to review and get back. These posts were deleted in February, and the old line that they could have seen it from the password list that was all over the internet and images from the crime scene photos didn't come out until January of 2016. So we have to keep these things in consideration, that these could not have possibly happened. Someone had to have hacked into his account to delete those comments, or the crime scene investigation unit in Dakota County did it themselves. That is the only two scenarios that are even possible for the deleted Facebook post. That's how important that one key is to this whole thing. Thoughts?
Yeah, and Dan, before you go too, can you also talk a little bit about the PI for those who are new?
Yes, I will cover that as well. We did. I did personally hire a private investigator using my own funds to look into this case, and he is going to take, this individual's in Pennsylvania, several months to review, come to his own conclusion, do his analysis. Right now he's looking into the lab reports, and he's already gone through the police reports several times. Then he's going to get into some of the other scenarios of the forensics and the reports and everything else. And then he's going to draw his own conclusion and then present a report. So I am going to provide another update on April 15th of where this individual is in his research. Now, once this investigation is done on his part, he's a pretty well-known individual who specializes in homicide cases, cold cases, and multiple death investigations. He is going to issue a report to give to me and to our team here that is public information. We are free at that point to take it to the media or take it to law enforcement, and he has no qualms about doing that. It's once we paid the fee to retain his services, that report is going to be public information, and he'll stand behind it. The other reason that I selected him going forward to do this job is that his job and relationship with us never ends. After the report is issued, he will be able to answer at any time going forward any new information or any questions relating to the case anytime we ask questions to, whether it's 5 years down the road or 6 months down the road or 10 years down the road. He is going to consider this case his baby going forward, even once the case is done. So I had set up a GoFundMe also out there. There's a campaign to reimburse myself to help defray some of the cost. That's out there on the Facebook page as well. But that's the update. I am looking forward to it, whatever it is. I and our team here is not steering him in any direction. In fact, I have never even contacted him over the phone yet. I have emailed several times and retained his services through some faxes and emails with the contract and whatnot, but I've never even spoken to this individual. So I want to keep him as, I don't want to steer this person in any direction at all. So I want to get
right,
honest.
and that's how and that's how he would want it too. He doesn't want anybody's opinion. He wants to read facts.
Yep. And that's, so I'm excited about that, just because I told him out of the gate that we're looking for the truth and what really happened here. We're not looking to benefit or hinder anybody or point any fingers as far as speculation or theories. We want the facts and the facts only, wherever that may lead us. And so that's it. I'm going to do another update on April 15th when I hear back from him. But that is it at this point. He had a couple of questions. The image of the bodies. He did contact me saying, where did I receive that photo and is it authentic, was the only two things he asked. And I thought that was very telling. Remember, we received that photo as part of a BCA FOIA request from the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. Many say that photo should have come redacted. There's no way they would have released a photo like that graphic photo. So there's speculation.
Yeah, I think it was an accident. Yeah.
And so there is speculation that it was either released unredacted as a miss, as someone that they just missed doing their job, or it was done on purpose by a white hat in the organization, or in other words, a good guy trying to get the real story out. But he thought that was very interesting that was released. Now, he also asked if it was authentic, which I didn't share with anyone yet until just right now. maybe that was his, just wondering where we got that photo from all by itself, because he knew. Anyway, the antenna, his radar went off when he got that photo, because he asked me right away, where did you get that from, and do you think it's authentic? And said, here it is, page 45 in the BCA report. This is what we got via a FOIA request. That's all I can answer. I'm assuming it's authentic. So that's what he said. The rest, he's busy doing his looking at the analysis, and he did the full police report. He's read 3 times and has taken notes, and now he's looking at the lab analysis and the forensics on the lab, various lab work.
Well, good. Thank you so much, Dan.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting stuff. So I'd like to get your guys' thoughts on the whole Facebook deleting here before I take off, because that is I was just thinking about that today, because that really points into 2 directions. Someone got in to hack it. David didn't seem the type of person to me that would be just giving out his password to his closest friends and coworkers on the project. So someone got in and did that, which also leads me to believe that it was another possible mistake by those perpetrators who did it and took a picture or wrote down the post when they knowingly left that password list there behind on the desk when they left. It may have been the same person or persons who also has images of the crime scene on their smartphone. The other strange thing, and I'm alluding to Sean Wright on those accounts. Sean Wright made a comment to Greg Fernandez that I'd like to reiterate. Back when this first happened, he said to Greg, I was probably the last person to see David alive. Mm-hmm. Now, why would you make a comment like that? I was probably the last person to see David Crowley alive. And I think if everyone just takes a step back and let that sink in, the magnitude of that comment. Number one, it's nothing that you would ever say. You either know you were the last person or you weren't. I don't see the word probably coming into play. But I will leave you all with that. All right, I got to jump off.
Thanks, Dan.
Love you,
guys. Have a good one.
You too.
I'd like to just kind of, or is there anybody else that wants to say anything?
Yes,
please?
Autumn had one more thing to say.
Yeah, before my phone dies. It's actually from December 23rd, 2014 at 10:07 p.m., Minneapolis, Minnesota, from Danny August Mason. It says, and quoted in quotations, it says, where do you think you're going? Nobody's leaving. Nobody's out on this fun, old-fashioned family Christmas. No, and exclamation point. We're all in this together. There's a full-blown 4-arm holiday emergency here. We're going to press on, and we're going to have the happiest Christmas since Ben Crosby tap danced with Danny effing K. And when Santa squeezes his fat, white, down the chimney tonight, he's going to find the jolliest bunch of a-holes this side of the nut house. Just thought I'd add that. That is December 23rd, 2014, 10:07 p.m.
And that's where? That's on who? On David?
That's
Danny August Mason. It's deleted now, by the way. And I took the screenshot when he is at some kind of theater thing, but he's got devil horns and a red face for his Facebook profile photo. Can
you either post that in the group or send that to somebody who can post that in the group? I'm not sure. Not sure that I've seen this.
I took a lot of photos before they deleted a lot of stuff after questioning everything. So.
Yeah, I would love to see that too.
Yeah, if there's any way you could help us get that out to the public, that would be great. I think I might have heard of this. I don't think I've seen. I don't know. Maybe once, but I don't know.
It made my skin crawl. So
just hearing you talk about it makes my skin crawl.
Yeah, just reading that, it's like, whoa, that's not okay. Yeah, well, my email address.
Sound like he's having fun with buddies doing something really sinister.
Right.
And who are the buddies that are involved? And I thought that's something also that's been deleted, but I didn't get a screenshot of. David's brother and Danny were very close, and I thought I just mentioned that. Very close.
David's brother and Danny Mason.
Yeah. In fact, there was talk beforehand about them alluding to have some kind of, I don't know, there was comments made about his girlfriend being what they call a beard, and Danny and him having a very close relationship. I thought
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't heard that either. It seems like, there was a lot that was kind of just taken.
Deleted.
And just, Catherine, I think you had another point to make, but I wanted to make sure. Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask Autumn if she could email me those. And my email address is just Catherine_Michelle@hotmail. And if you don't mind emailing me that and sharing what you have, that would be great. And then if you can't post to the group, let me know, and then I'll post it to the group.
Yeah, my Facebook page is kind of watched by my ex, so I kind of don't do much anymore. So but I can definitely email.
Okay, great. Yeah, go ahead, and then if you don't mind, I can post that, and I won't mention your name.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
You are welcome.
Yeah, because in this in the big PDF file that Dan got, it was a BCA 485. It's a 485-page PDF, and a lot of David's social media is in there. It's possible that the stuff that Derek is looking for is in there too, maybe. But there was a few interesting things in there in David's social media that the police had. One thing that they had, for some reason, was a shot, was like a profile picture of Sean Wright. And they had some weird things like that in there that just kind of seemed out of place. They had the post that was taken out. It's in the big 485-page document. So I was also wondering about that. If the police knew that somebody was in there taking posts out of David Crowley's account, why are we not hearing more about that? Where are those police reports? Where are those documents that show where they talked to Sean Wright? Because we know that they did talk to Sean Wright. We know that they also talked to Hendricks. They talked to him too. At least if that's what he said. Well, if they talked to him, there should be some data on that too. And on both of these guys, there's nothing. There's no mention. So in those 94 pages that we first got, it's curious who is mentioned, who is talked to, and who is not mentioned, and who is not talked to. I just found that very strange that some of this, a lot of this seems to go back to Sean Wright for whatever reason, whether he injected himself into this, or whether it goes deeper. His involvement in the whole thing is very strange. Very strange, and it's something that the police, I believe, the BCA 485 pages show that they were looking at Sean Wright. That's what I believe.
That could be, and I find it interesting too. The same thing. Why is there zero mention of any of David's so-called friends in any of the reports? I didn't read anything from other than. Was it Mitch Heil?
There was Mitch Heil, Danny August Mason, Chris Peck. Chris
I think I read something from Mitch Heil in the reports, but not from not from Danny August Mason. I didn't read anything from Mason Hendricks. I didn't read anything from Sean Wright. Nothing
from Hendricks but there was from Danny August Mason though.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's really the most. Some of that stuff is like, if anybody, and I'm not accusing Danny Mason of anything. I've wanted to debate Danny Mason, and I'm still open to that. But if there's anybody in this whole thing that has motive, or that has reason that the police should have been looking for motive, it's probably him. It's probably Danny August Mason.
Yeah, Danny and Sean. Both of them had motive. And again, I'm not accusing. That's just a fact. When it comes to $30 million and then prison time, that's a pretty strong motive.
Yeah, and they've never done anything to help us understand why that's not true. Nothing. It's always been, all of their actions have just led to it's almost like they want us to think that there is something there.
Yeah. And and going back to the posts that were deleted, like Dan said, I don't think that would be something that the police officers would do. That just doesn't, to me, that is not even an option. So it only leaves the only other option left is whoever did it had access to those passwords. They saw them, and as soon as they left, and when it finally broke, they went into the thing and they started deleting, but they only deleted certain things. There is no other explanation. And
there is a history of these people doing this, because when the Justice for David Crowley of Gray State page first started, it was created by a guy named Thomas Lapp. Thomas Lapp was trying to help these guys because the whole Gray State team and all of these people were making it seem like they were going to find out what really happened here. And Thomas Lapp gave them administrator rights, and they started deleting things. They started taking things out of that page. Wow. And, then Thomas Lapp told Dan Hennen, hey, you got to be careful. Then they came after Dan Hennen, and they wanted access to this group. And they wanted to make sure that the real story got out, but they didn't have any real story. Then, it goes on and on and on with the Hagman thing, too, where they were all these people were set to have a big conference call. And Dan Hennen can talk about this. He's talked about this many times, but they were all set to have this conference call to figure out how, what their next step was. And then all of a sudden, the conference call's off. Everybody's going dark. Nobody's talking about it. And it's just a bunch of sellouts. Just a bunch of sellouts. A bunch of cowards is what I call them. They're all cowards.
Yeah. Yeah, and, in all my conversations with Sean Wright, too, where he's always like, I know, you have to trust me, and if I tell you he did it, then he did it, and
he's
just
got
like
it all figured
he said to you, and I told him, I said, well, prove it to me. I'm open. If, from what I have found, David's not guilty. And I told him, I was like, if you have something, show it to me, and I will gladly change my mind, and I will gladly then go and openly, publicly say, here's the proof. But yet it never shows up, and it never comes.
No. It's right around the corner, but never here.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. All right. Do we have anybody else who wants to share their views or anything else they want to say? We're here.
Well, how much time do we have?
As much time as you need.
So this is back at Jamie. Just some things that we've been listening to. Kind of looking back at what Donna was talking about, the neighbor Judy. I believe we heard in one of the YouTube threads that her son actually worked for Homeland Security. So it's possible that because he did that, there's a possibility that she had, some extra lingo as far as wording and that kind of stuff. A possibility that we thought of. Another thing to shoot in here, as far as that bullet, that hole that they found, I believe, again, that was something that was said that, David's DNA was found on it because ultimately, he loaded it, but the nuclear DNA was not on it as far as, blood being found on it.
Well, let me clarify that real quick. Nuclear DNA comes from anything other than blood. Only new blood cells, brand new blood cells, as they're coming from the bone marrow and the thighs, have nuclear DNA, but the rest of the blood cells do not. So the nuclear DNA is probably from, like you said, when he loaded the gun. They, in the report, do state no blood was found on the bullet. So yes, you're correct.
Okay.
So they don't have a bullet at all for David?
Not that we've seen.
That's what we've heard throughout the whole thing. And then just another aspect of the whole concept of the gray state and what we've as a Christian, as a Christ follower that David was and that we are, this was something, this video really does show, in a belief, many people have tried, Hollywood has made the end times as the, world may see it. End times reality, according to the book of Revelation, is what he was showing.
Yes, Revelation from the Bible.
Right, from the Bible. And, as far as what he was presenting is his view of what he believes, and as a Christian, what he was revealing that. And these are, things that it's not, it may be, they may think nobody knows about this stuff. As far as what we see is, just even, I believe, the symbol on their shirt of the gray state, the triangle, is of Freemasons. That Illuminati. The Illuminati and the all-seeing eye and all that. We're not blind to these things. We know it. We know that it's out there. I believe that the public in general may be unaware of it, or just naive of it, or just not playing it off as not real. But if you do your studies, I believe you will find out that this is something that is true and has been going on for many years throughout our history. So as far as what his documentary and the movie was going to be about, we can see it was definitely his depiction of end times before what martial law comes in place, a one world government, and his view of after, in Revelation, the rapture occurs. What's going to happen then? And again, Hollywood has depicted it, all this stuff that's going to go on, but that's Hollywood. David, I believe, knew,
the
who was behind. Yep.
Yeah, he had done a lot of research on all that stuff, and he even stated in one of his interviews that that the movie really did have like a spiritual aspect to it, and he's kind of to let people know that, hey, this not what is coming, but what you're already in the middle of, and you don't even know it.
Exactly. Yep. It is. It's something that, and as we've seen, it's called TV programming for a reason. Yeah. Turn your TVs off. Don't get them out of the house.
Right.
Don't turn them on. They can turn and see you. There is that capability.
Yes.
But I think people are unaware of that. So yeah, as far as what we know, what we believe, we're right in line with David. There's not, we know these things are going to happen. He was bringing it out into a movie, into a reality, and wanted to keep it as a fiction movie, movie release. But yeah, we know that anyone who reads Revelation and understands what is about to happen. We're at that times. I mean, and his belief, I believe, was right there, and he knew what was happening. He knows how the army, or actually all armed forces, the government, how they can manipulate their recruits. Yes, sir. How high, sir? All that stuff, and it comes into play when everything comes, down to the wire. Who's going to be on their side and who is not. If you're going to be on your side, great, you're part of us. If you're not, things will happen. Enough said for that. But
amen to that. Yeah.
Yep. So it's one of those things that we, we're, like I say, we're 2 weeks into this, and the knowledge that we've just been going through and trying to get into our minds and digest, I guess is what you'd call it, is just phenomenal. And for we thank you all of you guys for the in-depth research that you've put towards this matter, and it's very enlightening to us.
The timeline was amazing that Dan Hennen read off, because I thought I had to sit down and put it all together.
Oh my goodness!
And I found that, and I went, oh,
yeah,
there it is.
Oh yes, that's amazing.
That was we sat and listened to that, and it's like, this was fact, this was fiction. This is what we know. This is what we these are the allegations. Yeah, so that in and of itself was just fabulous to hear an actual timeline of how things came down, and he put it in that order, and that was fabulous to hear. So we give him just a multitude of thanks for that, but and also all you guys here, in and of it, that of itself, that's thank you all for the in-depth studies you've all done, and we hope
what he was making was taken right from the Bible.
Yep, yeah, it really was.
But he didn't want everyone to hear it that way because they won't watch it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So he was, trying to do it in a way that people would listen to the message.
Mm-hmm.
But it involves the government. It involves those above him. So.
Yeah, and when he made the comment to Sean Wright that, because Sean's like, hey, you're going to throw me in jail if you put this out. And David's like, no, it's not. You're okay. It's not meant to put you in jail. It's meant to put others in jail. And I think right then and there, David put the target on him without even realizing it.
Yeah.
Right. Did I know I read it, but I don't know who put it out there about that he had actually said in November that I'm not suicidal. If I end up dead, I didn't do it.
Yes. He says I am not suicidal. If I end up, yes.
Where did that come from? One of his.
I think that came from Sean Wright, didn't it? I mean, because I've been looking for that. So if you guys have something on that, I'd love to.
I will dig it out then, and because I'll find it.
Yeah, the only thing that I know of is that Hagman and Hagman, and I always forget. It's a news show, and one of them had, after David died, he came out and said that David told me that I was not prone to suicide, because they got into it about, hey, aren't you worried about talking about all this stuff? They're going to come after you, and that's what he told him. And this, I believe, Hagman and Hagman is like a Canadian show. It's a pretty well-known show that one of the hosts, they're two brothers, I think, and one of them really took to David and came out as soon as this happened and was like, there's no way David did this. He's one of the only ones in the alternative media, in the media in general, that actually came out and said David is not guilty and that David was not prone to suicide. But Hagman Sr., okay?
Well, on that note, aren't you guys a little concerned for yourselves?
No, because we have God. I have Jesus Christ. I don't fear anything. I go wherever He leads me.
And I need to. I know I'm going to go when I do, but I after that documentary, when we watched it, we found out in the evening, on a Sunday evening, and I just had nightmares, and I just woke up. There is something totally wrong, and that's just a documentary. That's before digging into anything.
Right.
And it's just. Ugh.
And I want to add to that too. I agree with Greg. I have a strong faith in God, and I truly believe He led me to this case. And the way I look at it is, if it's my time, only God can determine when I'm allowed to go. So if it's my time and somebody takes me out because of this, it was God's planning and it was His will. So I'm okay with that. I'm okay with anything that God decides for my life. And so I will fear no man. I just won't.
Let's keep doing that. That's courage, yeah.
To keep you strengthened and empower you to find the truth one way or another, whether it whether it be on this side of eternity or the next.
Amen.
Yep, and we can all look forward to that day, and we feel that it, personally, we feel it's coming very soon with all the things that are happening over in Israel right now. We don't believe that it's anything that's happening here in the United States. It's what's happening over in Israel right now. And that's what we focus our time and devotions on right now. We see what's happening over there because that's where it all starts, and Israel is our focus, and that's where God's people are, and they're flocking back to their country as daily. Well, that's a good sign. We know the signs of end times, so we're there. So
true.
All right.
Donna, did you have a question?
Yes, Catherine. I wanted to know about the David's skull and the blunt force trauma that we can see in the skull. Was that ever mentioned in the autopsy?
No, it's not mentioned at all, and I really find that a little disconcerting because it's obvious. When I was looking at that photo, and I'm like going, something's wrong with this. So I emailed it to my coroner friend, and I said, wait, okay, something about this picture's not sitting right with me. I'm missing it. What am I missing? But this isn't right. And they wrote back right away. They're like going, are you kidding? This is blunt force trauma. And then we started talking about it. I'm like, and then they started to show me. They go, here's bruising, here's trauma, here's a hit, here's an impact, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh my goodness, why is that not even mentioned? The only thing the autopsy report states is that there is bruising when they pulled back the skin from the skull piece, but they're not saying if it's the skull piece that has the exit wound or is it the extra skull piece. They were very vague in the report, but they did state that they saw bruising. But that is it. They mention nothing of the blunt force trauma, but it's clearly obvious.
Yeah. When I seen that picture, I thought of paleo chewing, on the flesh, and maybe it left marks, right? But yeah, you can see it's indented.
Yes, and then when you look too at the skin, then this is another thing that I told Sergeant Gummert. I'm like going, look at that skin. I sent it to him and I circled it. I said, it's straight. You see straight lines. That does not occur from someone pulling it, does not occur from a dog chewing on it. That was cut. When you're by process of elimination, there's only one way to get a straight line, and that's with a knife or something sharp. And with a knife being at the scene with all three of their blood on it, and they just totally disregarded the knife altogether.
Right, and then the teeth, like the jawline where it was very smooth. It did look cut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree. Yeah. And the thing with the jaw, because that's what I thought too. I'm like going, okay, to me it looks cut or sawed off or something. But the coroner friend of mine, they did state that how the jaw and the skull is put together, that if a blunt force trauma occurs, that it can break away clean like that in that area. But I told them, I was like, well, okay, I'd have to see that because I've never seen that before. But they said they had. But still, they said that was not done by a dog. They were emphatic about that. They're like, no way did a dog do this.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to ask you about that because, I don't know, that skull is very concerning, right?
Yes. I mean, that right there tells you everything. And that's what I told Sergeant Gummert. I go, right there is your proof that David was a victim of murder. How can you just walk away from this? And he would not answer the question.
I mean, we know that was David's skull?
Yes, it was located to the left of David's leg.
We're sorry,
and in the reports
but some
it says that
may be experiencing temporary audio issues. Our teams are working to resolve this as quickly as possible.
Wow, I just heard a message. Are you guys still there?
Yep.
Okay. It was to the left of David's leg, and in the reports it states that the bones by each body were collected with and put with that body. And so since that skull fragment was nowhere near Kamel, it was right next to David, you have to assume that it went with David. And it's a large piece. And the piece of skull that they fit, in the autopsy reports it states there's a good-sized piece of skull. And when you measure that skull fragment, it's exactly the same size as the one that they took that was put with his body, found at the scene next to his body, and it articulates with the remaining part of his skull. So I'm like, you guys, this is his skull. So how can you see this, know this, and then still blame this man for murder and suicide? And they just will not answer the question. They just refuse.
Wow. I just think there's a lot of information held back, and that's why we're all so confused. I really do. I mean, there's so much more to this that we don't know.
Yeah.
But they've given us everything. If you ask them, they'll tell you. We've given you everything that proves David Crowley is guilty. That right there shows that there's nothing.
You know, there's policy, procedures, and things they got to follow or are following. And
they should follow truth.
They don't have to give us everything, and they won't.
No, but they don't have to lie either. They cannot lie to us either. So they can't tell us that we've given you everything and then not give us everything. You know, so that, and nobody said, we never said give us everything. Mm-hmm. But from what they're saying, you have everything you need to know that proves that David Crowley is guilty beyond a shadow of a doubt, and it's not there. There's nothing there. So if they have, and if they do have anything else, where is it, and what is it? Because it would contradict a lot of what a lot of other people are saying, which would also lead to another type of a cover-up, even after the fact.
Yes, exactly. And,
in my opinion,
you know, when you start reading their reports and you start questioning them about what they said, like, for instance, the skull piece, Kamel's left hand, they're saying that the dog ate all of the missing body parts. Her left hand is under her abdomen. So how did the dog get to that? It couldn't. It's impossible. And so they don't explain how the left hand went missing. Her head, when they first came in, there was a blanket that was rolled up and put in her head position. So the first officers who entered didn't even know her head was missing. They just said they couldn't see it. They only saw a blanket. When they moved that rolled up blanket is when they discovered her head was gone as well as David's. So it's like the dog didn't roll that blanket up and put it there. Who did?
Well, I don't understand about Raina. Like, her head was intact.
Yes.
Why?
Yeah, if the dog was going to be eating something, it would choose the easier thing. And 2 adult skulls versus a child? Yeah.
Well, it is credited. Sorry to interrupt you, Donna.
I just meant the damage.
Right.
To Raina wasn't nearly as bad.
Well, her whole arm was gone. She's the only one who has a missing arm.
Yeah, that.
And a fractured rib.
And a fractured rib, which makes no sense, especially where the rib is at, right?
That's bad. Yeah, I don't know.
And it's like, okay, if they have answers to these things, if they're hiding those, there's no reason to hide those. Only if you want to fuel more speculation. If your goal is to create as many conspiracy theories as possible to trick people, to fool people, to not give people the actual truth, then that's a bad goal, and that's not a goal that the taxpayers, that the public should be paying for. First of all, a lot of people should be fired. That's my view. A lot of people should be fired. But even if they're not, I will settle for them just saying, you know what, our conclusion was wrong. And I know it's never going to happen, right? Ask any police officer.
Yeah, every police officer I've talked to said the
like
same thing.
They'd laugh at
just
you.
Won't happen.
Yeah, but there's a first time for everything.
Right? I have hope.
Well, you know what really helps, and that's media.
Yeah.
Recognition, you know, and not
but
to
they've
sound...
hurt this case so much.
Well, you know...
So much, in so many ways.
These cases get opened up, and public wants to know about it, and it's always the young, attractive couples. It really is.
I know.
Mean, yeah. I mean, if this was opened up and people really found out, it would be very, very interesting. And I got a question for you. how long do they hold on to evidence for?
That's a good question. I think they hold on to it for a long time. I think they actually put it in some type of storage facility. Not only do they take photos of their evidence and keep it locked away like on a computer storage system, but I think they have to actually keep the physical evidence as well.
Yeah, they have a lot of the swabs and a lot of that stuff they have on a CD. So.
Okay, yeah, so Dana is saying that not if the case is closed, they won't hold on to it. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's something we need to find out for sure.
Yeah, actually, that's a good idea because the BCA should be able to answer that. How long do they keep this stuff? And they're on YouTube making their own videos too, so they're acting like they've done a great job. But this is a big case here, and they did not do a good job as far as just where the conclusion led them. But yeah, I guess, of course, in the end, it's not them who comes to the conclusion, right? So it's understanding the whole process of each department, what they do. So it's not like, I mean, when you really look at it, it began with the Apple Valley Police, and they got the final say, right?
Right.
Unfortunately. Well, not if we can help it.
I really believe that they were overwhelmed, and Judy was there feeding them information, and that just made it all, just kind of closed it all up that way. Made it easier for them.
Because something like this, like you said, I totally agree, completely overwhelming, and they were not experienced enough to handle it. And if they have somebody who can say, hey, well, yeah, this guy's kind of loopy and he wasn't keeping himself clean and he had a mohawk and, it could be suicide. Well, I mean, of course that's going to make it easier. They're going to go, oh, phew, now we don't have to do this because, man, where would we start? And so, but then once they made that conclusion, they dug their heels in and refused to back down. And that's where I think the problem lies. It's like, not condemning them, but everyone's human, even police officers. People make mistakes, even police officers. So you should be human enough to say, oops, let's take a second look. But they won't even do that.
Yeah. I don't know. I really think this mental health and stigma is really what closed things,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think what closed things is that the family didn't step up and say, you know what, wait a minute, there's something wrong here. And if we would have seen more of that, like there was no reason, there was no resistance except for people like us who didn't know them, and that was it. Then that's not going to be the case. This guy has a big family. Both of his sides are huge families. At some point, somebody in their family is going to start having these same questions if they're not already having them. And they could be a very big help, which unfortunately for them and for the, it puts them in a tough spot. It makes them vulnerable.
Yeah.
And it could put them on a list where they're people that are being watched to make sure that they don't join this group, to make sure that they don't communicate with us. And I've seen that stuff. I've seen it happen.
And that's what it feels like. Like, I would think the alums would be really encouraged to find out. Like, what a horrible, horrible way for things to end. I
would think Kamel's mom, I think, would be the best in that family right now. She'd be our biggest ally. I don't understand why she's not, unless she's being shielded from us, which is probably happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's probably why there's so many fake things out there.
Yeah, because if my sister or my daughter or anybody, even a friend, was murdered the way Kamel was, I would definitely want to know. I would not just accept anything. In the moment something didn't look right, I would be all over that. But I don't know if it's because they're in such shock from the deaths.
I think they're out there. They're watching. They're listening. They're looking at everything. I think they are out there, and I think one day they will help.
Well, I feel so bad. I can't even imagine. I don't even want to imagine what they've had. Either family has had to deal with.
Yeah, and it's grisly. It
is.
Yeah. Oh. Well, I'm going to sign off, and thank you so much for everything you guys do, and I look forward to getting this case open.
Us too. Awesome. Thank you for joining.
Oh, thank you, guys.
Speaking of that, Catherine, do you have anything? I know somebody had asked about the petition, where the petition is at.
The petition is still up, and it's now sitting here, let me just double check.
It's still growing.
Right. Yeah, it's still up and collecting signatures. We are at 1,068 signatures right now, so which is really good. And so other people know, I am still contacting all of the legal departments, everybody I can think of, and I do include the petition along with it, so that it is being used, just so people know. It's being sent out to the legal offices.
That's awesome. All right, anybody else? Anybody who has not talked yet that wants to share any views? Anybody has any other views? Or else I will play my guitar here for the next 30 minutes. No, I'm just kidding. Believe me, you don't want to hear that.
Yeah. So I think that's it.
All right.
Yeah, it's getting late here too. So I'm so grateful to everybody who joined and asked questions. Thank you, everyone.
Excellent. All right. Until we meet again. Until next time, everybody keep up the great work, and thank you all for your great research. Make sure you check out those documents, research it for yourself, and encourage others to research it for themselves. See you next time.
Thank you.